Masithandase. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of our people. On magtige God, ons bid dat u gedroende ons vergadrings, ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sigelela Nkosi ilizwe lethu nabantu balo. Umisele ukulunga kwiphondo lethu. Nkosi sigelela iAfrika. Gcina abantwana bayo. Khokhela inkokheli zayo. Nkosi nike uxolo iAfrika. All this we beg in your most holy name. Amen. You may be seated. I recognize the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 20, subsection 1, I move that precedence be given to the order of the day.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. The motion is carried. In light of that, then we're going to the subject of the day. Where's the speaker's list? You see, they don't give the speaker the speaker's list. So the speaker does not have the speaker's list, but I have them now. I have it now. Thank you. I just want to request honorable members that because it's normal that members will want to go to the ladies and gents, but whatever business that you leave the chamber for, let us recognize the presiding officers as we leave and as we get into the chambers. It is only fair to do so for the decorum of this House. Thank you, honorable members. I recognize the Chief Whip, Honorable Wenger.
The Financial Mail of the 15th of August details South Africa's great unraveling. The article makes some truly terrifying remarks. The message in summary is this: if we think things are bad now, they could get much worse if the current economic trends continue to be met with, quote, catatonic policy uncertainty, confusion, and half measures. They say our country has a grim prognosis because of the government's failure to implement decisive economic reforms. It is important that this House debates the rapid unraveling of South Africa because policy uncertainty and political positioning at a national level have a profound impact on our province. The Centre for Development and Enterprises report, Running Out of Road, says, quote, it's hard to avoid despair about whether government and the ruling party fully grasp the depth of the changes required and how much leadership it will take from the President to get this done. Ramaphosa may have cauterized some of the bleeding, but the problems are chronic. According to the Financial Mail's analysis, he heads a state and a party incapable of making choices out of fear of not meeting vested expectations. And they say, even when choices are made, the state lacks the capacity to turn those decisions into effective policy because of the lack of professionalism in the public service. State capture over the second term of the Zuma administration stinks at around 1.5 trillion rand. That's just shy of the entire annual budget for the country. And it doesn't seem to be getting any better. 2 out of 3 South Africans think corruption increased in the past 12 months. Bad political management of departments means that most departments are on life support. The National Health Department has a hidden deficit of 25 billion rand, mainly on medicines. We know that this directly impacts on our province when we can't get vital vaccines or medication. In essence, we cannot afford to deliver the basics, never mind the NHI, which would deal a crippling blow to our nation. Bad political management means spending will have to be reduced. Read more budget cuts. And we feel these budgets acutely in hospital waiting rooms, in overcrowded classrooms, on empty train platforms, on phones that ring unanswered at police stations. All services are impacted. The SAP's budget is being cut by 20 billion rand, which could mean 23,000 less police. Speaker, to put things into historical context, during the Great Depression of 1921 to 1941, which was considered the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world, the unemployment rate was less than 20%. South Africa's unemployment in this year is almost 30%. In 1933, during the very height of the Great Depression, Franklin D. Roosevelt delivered some apt words. He said, "Values have shrunken to fantastic levels. Taxes have risen. Our ability to pay has fallen. Government of all kinds is faced by serious curtailment of income. The means of exchange are frozen in the currents of trade. The withered leaves of industrial enterprise lie on every side. Farmers find no markets for their produce. The savings of many years in thousands of families are gone." More important, a host of unemployed citizens face the grim problem of existence, and an equally great number toil with little return. Only a foolish optimist can deny the dark realities of the moment. He went on to say, "Confidence languishes, for it thrives only on honesty, on honor, on the sacredness of obligation, on faithful protection and unselfish performance. Without them, it cannot live. Restoration calls, however, not for a change in ethics alone. This nation asks for action, and action now," he said. This South African nation asks for action, and action now. But, Mr. Speaker, there is a beacon of hope in the southwestern peninsula of our country, where 10 years ago there was a similarly gloomy outlook. Not a single provincial government department obtained a clean audit, and only one of the province's 30 municipalities obtained a clean audit. And business confidence tanked to below the national average. But then the citizens of this province chose a new government, and 10 years later, 83% of departments get clean audits, as do 21 out of 30 municipalities. The unemployment rate is almost 10 points lower than the national average, and the rural and youth unemployment rates are the lowest, and life expectancy is the highest. Policy uncertainty and political positioning at a national level undoubtedly have a negative impact on the Western Cape, but with sound leadership, there is another way, there is an alternative. In conclusion, to quote St. John, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Our light in this province shines in the face of this unraveling. Our light shines in the darkness of corruption and maladministration, and we will not let this darkness overcome us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Wenga, Honorable Chief Whip. I now recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Mr. Speaker, a wise man once warned that the loudest of doomsayers so often carry the weightiest of sins. That warning has come true today. There are those who like to shout from the rooftop, spewing vicious diatribe, blaming everything on the government of the day, while forgetting that the problem that we are dealing with did not start today. This is a point I will return to later on my speech. The article further states that the government is unable to make hard political choices necessary to spark growth or prevent steady rise in the country's debt ratio. Those hard political choices advocated for in the articles are as follows, among others. is that we must cut civil service expenditure, especially the wage bill, that we must restructure ESCOM and SAA and other SOEs. These include decisions around ESCOM staffing efficiency and how it will be reformed. And government needs to implement decisive economic reform, which include privatization as called for on page 25. Speaker, as the ANC, we reject these proposals outright. The ANC government will not give in to these demands. It is an undisputable fact that we are experiencing economic challenges in the country, but it's not true that we are not doing anything about it. We are not loud about it, but we acknowledge it. In his SONA, can I give it a try again, Mr. Speaker? Yes. Okay. In his SONA, the President gave an honest reflection on this. He clearly stated that our economy is not growing and is not creating jobs. Again, another acknowledgement. We are not going to deny facts. The goal of the ANC government, as presented by Minister Mboweni on his July budget vote debate, remains that of maintaining fiscal stability and to promote growth. That's what we are planning to do. It's good that you support that. In this regard, Speaker, the minister reassured the nation that the package of 5 measures to stimulate economic growth as outlined by the President in the September last year will be that of implementing, among other things, implementing growth-enhancing economic reform, such as broadband spectrum allocation, restructuring the electricity sector, and regulation of the transport sector to lower prices. Reprioritization of public spending to support job creation and economic growth. Establishing an infrastructure fund, addressing urgent matters in education and health, and investing in municipal social infrastructure improvement. That is the plan that we are having. Speaker, on OS
Chairperson,
and
on a point of order, Chair.
There's a point of order. I recognize, sorry, Honorable
Thank you, Chair.
Mvimbi. Yes, sir.
Can we be reminded, can the House be reminded that Honorable Mvimbi is doing his maiden speech and nothing controversial is being said, so the members on the opposite side are completely out of order to interrupt all the time.
Thank you, Honorable Said. Honorable members on my right-hand side, I request that we observe that principle so that we do not bend our own conventions. May I recognize that you've lost half a minute, Honorable Member, but the time I made sure that I paused it immediately when there was a point of order, so you didn't lose. You are right on spot now. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will also request that if to other members, if the truth hurt, they must suffer in silence, please. Speaker, on SOE, we were told that a broad strategic framework in the form of green paper, which will culminate in a white paper, will be published soon. It will deal with the future that government expects SOEs to play in a fast-changing micro and microeconomic environment. Moreover, National Treasury, with the Department of Public Enterprises, have developed the terms of reference and scope of work for the Chief Restructuring Officer, which was appointed in July already. These are steps taken to address these challenges, but those steps will not culminate to arbitrary retrenchment and privatization as called for by some members on the other side. We welcome the appointment of Freeman Nomvalo as the Chief Restructuring Officer of ESCOM. He is expected to oversee the unbundling of ESCOM into separate generation, distribution, and transmission entities. He is also expected to restructure entities' labor force. And of course, I know most of the time when people attack ESCOM, they are always silent on this. The monopoly on coal supply for ESCOM must be broken. The practice is anti-competitive and deprives us an opportunity of getting better prices in the market. Speaker, at the center of our strategy should be the need to grow the economy, job creation, as well as to reduce poverty and inequalities. We do not want jobless growth. We know South Africa has experienced growth in the past, but it has been jobless growth. It actually started during apartheid government days, and we are always silent about what apartheid government did. In the past, there have been economic growth, however, it was jobless economic growth. That is why the government is busy developing an economic strategy that will bring about inclusive growth in the economy. It must not be an economy that makes the rich richer and the poor more poorer. We know that the Guptas also funded the DA.
Order.
Inclusive growth will also include broadening the ownership of the economy. It will bring about socio-economic transformation. Among other things, this broadening of the economy will seek to address some of the current challenges in the Western Cape, like the skewed pattern of ownership in the economy. Apartheid, in a way, still exists in the Western Cape. For example, in the agricultural economy, blacks only own 1%. 1%. No, I know some of you have got a habit of always challenging the statistics. The need for faster growth and more inclusive growth was also highlighted in the NDP. When we do growth, it must be an inclusive growth. The NDP is also the program that you have adopted in this house, and you've actually agreeing with it. To realize it, the NDP state that our strategy should include raising exports, improving skills development, which we are sometimes ignoring as this government, lowering the cost of living for the poor, and investing in a competitive infrastructure. Through Dimakaya, the president's economic advisor, stated in the article, which for some reason it was not actually quoted as well, that over the past decade, government spending was largely skewed towards consumption, not investment. We admit that. However, in the coming years, this will be reversed as government is curbing consumption spending and increasing the bias towards infrastructure. That should be a welcome commitment. It's actually a commitment that is already yielding results. We know that the government, the president himself has embarked on actually investment pledges of up to 3 billion. Up to now, there's already 250 billion of that has been pledged. In fact, it should go a long way to ease the fears of the insurance companies on the issue of prescribed assets. I must say that I'm not the biggest fan of that idea, but at this point, we need to work, all of us together, to salvage the situation. It must be noted that the principle is good, that we invest in government-approved assets to improve the situation, but we have to consider the risk and the economic performance of such institutions. Speaker, above I said that I will get back to this point about the loudest doomsayers who often carry the weightiest of sins. Selective amnesia is a dangerous disease. Today we are told about the economy plunging into chaos and sliding into debt trap. The IMF loans have been also raised. But these doomsayers seem to forget that since the dawn of democracy, we have been burdened with the apartheid debt. You never say anything about that. We are always silent about that. Personally, I think the movement should consider introducing a wealth tax as one of the mechanisms to raise revenue and to service apartheid debt, wealth tax should
Thank
also
you,
assist
Honorable
to address
Member.
the challenge
Your
of
time is
inequality.
up. Thank you. Order, order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Ningaqhuba ke ngodlo. Honorable members, order.
So do you, Mr.
I've
Speaker, do you
got
allow
a
them
speaker.
to
I've got a speaker on the floor, and your time is up, sir. Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, I just want to request that we exercise some restraint. There's nothing wrong. Thank you. I've got a request, and my request is that let us exercise some restraint. There's nothing wrong with heckling, and as long as we're doing that within the confines of allowing the member to be audible. And if it defeats that objective, then we're not really helping the business of the House. So I'm really making that humble request to the honorable members. I now recognize Honorable Minister of Community Safety, Honorable Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable members. In the honeymoon period and the incredibly exciting period immediately after the 1994 elections, a lot of effort went into building what is referred to as the post-apartheid state. And I heard the member talking about the apartheid state, so the post-apartheid state. The ruling party advocated for the replacement of what they refer to as the apartheid bureaucracy with a new so-called revolutionary group of KD deployees. What seemed to be a bold move towards building an inclusive state resulted in a disastrous outcome. We're still having the outcome of that. The skill base of the state was systematically gutted at 3 levels, Mr. Speaker. We see the impact of this today, particularly in local government. The deployment policy of the ANC was not based on merit, rather it was predicated on loyalty to the ruling party. What followed at all 3 levels of government was the systematic looting and destruction of the state by these very deployed cadres. In other words, Mr. Speaker, they stole the state empty, the fiscus empty. In other words, Mr. Speaker, they're all supposed to be in prison. Every day we receive greater detail. Of this through the Zondo Commission at the moment. However, I fear this is simply the tip of the iceberg. Inclare Basica.
Order, honorable members. Honorable
is not an example to a caucus.
Honorable Minister, will you please take your seat? Will you please take your seat? Honorable members, I see the volume has also been increased this side. You know, you think that you've got a straight committee voice, but it doesn't work here. I'm at pains to request honorable members that let us allow the speakers to address this House. Because this is a debate. If you have got an issue, a subjective interjection, let your next speaker from your party to deal with that, because it's a debate. But I wouldn't like a situation where the debate is across the floor, because then we're not helping the debate. Honorable Wenger, when she moved the motion for this to take place, she meant that we must debate it, because Parliament allowed us to have this debate. May I please request members to help me with this, for the benefit of the House, for all of you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Claire Basica's article entitled A Fiscal Unraveling, she notes that South Africa has arrived at a point where politics and debt collide. Yes, he highlights how a weak attachment to the principle of constitutionalism, non-racialism, remember we all forgot about non-racialism, a market-based economy, and the rule of law are unraveling in South Africa. Speaker, we need to ask ourselves, how long can we afford to be held hostage by the ANC's factional battles, including the likes of the CR17 campaign? The interests of a political party are being put before the interest of the country.
There's a point of order, Honorable Minister. Will you please take your seat?
I just
Honorable
want to
Mvimbi.
ask whether the honorable member is willing to take a question.
Thank you.
Done. Mr. Vimba, we must 7 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Or 9
Honorable
minutes.
Minister.
This demonstrates, Mr. Speaker, by the spiraling unemployment and the crime rates at the moment in the country. This further has a spillover consequences on our township economies, whose local beings and other businesses are extorted by the likes of the infamous Boko Haram gang for security.
I wish to request that honorable members, again, let's manage the tempers. Honorable Minister, there's a point of order. I recognize the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd actually like to be able to hear what my colleague is saying, and there's quite a lot of conversing, which is actually interrupting the Minister's ability to deliver his speech in the House. If you could please ask the members for their cooperation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chief Whip. I think I've raised this with the honorable members and with the House in general. May we proceed, Honorable Minister?
So I said this, the further has spilled over into our township economies, whose local shebeens and other spaza shops are extorted by the likes of the infamous Boko Haram gang for security money, or what they call protection money. Similarly, legitimate businesses in Long Street are forced to hire security officials to prevent such extortions, and that the security companies are themselves extortionists. This indicates the collapse of the rule of law, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, where the rule of law collapses, so too does our criminal justice system, as it becomes more vulnerable to exploitation, the very criminals it seeks to apprehend. Clearly, criminal gangs and syndicates are taking advantage of the collapsing state, and of the rule of law allows them to walk freely amongst the innocent and vulnerable. I realize that the opposition hate to be reminded of this. But while the DA in government, and we will continue to fight for the people of this province and the country, there is hope for South Africa. And I want to say to you, the Honourable Speaker, I want to say to the opposition, there is hope for the country. In reality, the reality is that while the rest of South Africa's story is one of the decline and disaster, the DA's Western Cape government is a story of growth and prosperity. This is why we have the highest school retention rate, the lowest unemployment rate, and the best delivery of all provinces. That's why every one of us, we're cramping in here into this province. In fact, Gauteng Premier David Makaru has come out saying that believes the Western Cape to be the best run province. Speaker, the Western Cape government has consistently called for increased and more equitable allocations of police personnel to crime-ravaged communities in the Western Cape. We will continue to fight this battle on behalf of our citizens and put maximum pressure on the national government to improve the poor police population ratio here in the Cape. Rather than waiting for SAPS and the national government to fulfill their mandate, Mr. Speaker, and safeguard our citizens, the Department of Community Safety has made K9 units, implemented K9 units into a number of places like Swartland, like Stellenbosch, and they have rebranded the neighborhood watches and as a priority, and prioritizing the uptake of young people from gang-afflicted communities into the Chrysalis Academy, Youth Academy. We have further established a collaborative approach in one instance in the Strand, Somerset West area, where we quell unrest on the N2, and in effect, really affected that specific communities. 2 weeks ago, there was land invasions and car smashing on N2, resulting in protests and road blockades over the long weekend. My department responded by bringing together neighborhood watches, CPFs, private security companies, ratepayers association, all of them, Sanro, and the community members to mediate the violence. And I tell you, the unrest has stopped since. So innovatively, we have to continue to do that, Speaker. The ANC led national government out to take a leaf from our book. They must come learn by us. And they're already learning. I'm so happy. They are learning. The DA-led Western Cape government and the City of Cape Town joint commitment to safeguarding the residents is further demonstrated by the deployment of the 100 law enforcement in Bonteheuwel. This will also now increase. We will look at far more and many more of those kind of deployments in other gang and other high-profile areas. Since this deployment, there's been a sharp decrease in the number of murders committed in that township. This is a phenomenal, given that between the beginning of January and the 30th of June 2019, 46 murders were committed. Clearly, our country is at an impasse. If our economy continues to be undermined by the ANC, by stealing and by theft and looting the fiscus, important state functions such as our criminal justice system will be obliterated. I do, however, believe that there's hope, Mr. Speaker. There's inclusive, resilient, and beautiful. She believes in an open opportunity society for all. She is the Democratic Alliance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, order. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. I can safely say that Honorable Lily, his time, he actually saved a minute from his time, despite me having interjected because of the point of orders. May I then... And unfortunately, that minute I can't give it to the next speaker. Honorable Heron.
Mr. Speaker, I hope that's not part of my time. Mr. Speaker, the Financial Mail article talks about key problems like low growth, rising unemployment, and mounting debt. And who amongst us cannot agree that those are problems that our country faces? But I wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't actually deviate from my speech and say that this debate to me has become an exercise in self-gratification. In our Rules Committee last week or this week, I raised with you that we are wasting the taxpayers' money in what I see in this House. And today's debate is an example of that. Look at this. The House is empty. There's nobody here to listen. You, Mr. Speaker, wanted a House that the people would come and listen to us addressing the issues that concern the people of this province. This gallery is empty. We are wasting taxpayers' money. Mr. Speaker, the Premier has identified 5 priority areas.
Order, honourable members. I would like to allow the honourable member to speak. We may not. It doesn't have to be an issue that you agree with, but let us please allow the honourable member to express himself.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm asking this House not to waste our time and the people of the province's time. We are paid to be here to address the problems that are in this province. The Premier has provided or indicated that he has 5 priority areas. Why didn't the DA put up one of those priority areas for debate so we can debate an actual solution for this province? Instead, we are engaged in some kind of high school debate. We are engaged in some sort of high school debate, self-gratifying. We have the ANC and the DA playing off against each other's failures. We are wasting taxpayers' time. This House is a waste of time if this is what we're going to be doing. I implore you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm imploring you, Mr. Premier, to put on the agenda your priorities for debate so we can debate those and not some article that appeared last week in the Financial Mail. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. Honorable members. Order, honorable members. Order. I now recognize Honorable Christians. Order, honorable members.
Speaker, policy uncertainty is scaring investor confidence. However, there's many challenges that this country is facing. We're looking at state-owned entities. That is a disaster. We're looking at a bloated public service wage bill that is beyond control. And the ACDP is saying this, today that the ANC national government must be held responsible and accountable for the poor financial performance over the past decade or so. Speaker, I want to say the following, and the President and the ANC, and I hope the colleagues here will see, the President and the ANC must make difficult decisions because our people in the road and the communities are suffering because of service delivery protests. Speaker, hard decisions must be made. In order to stabilize this economy, hard decisions must be made. And we also ask the Premier of this province to make hard decisions in order to grow the economy further in the Western Cape. Speaker, the 500 billion rand wage bill is out of control. It's believed, according to the World Bank, is the second largest of all countries, and the 500 billion is just increasing, and something must be done. And Speaker, it will also to note is that our deficit is climbing year by year, and we cannot afford that. But if decisions are not made in this country to turn it around, we will leave the future generation in a lot of debt. So, Speaker, I welcome this debate, but I think our Premier and leaders must take it up with the President and keep them to account and say there must be a turnaround, because we cannot get future generations to be indebted for silly mistakes that the ANC government is doing. And thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, order. I now recognize Honorable Murray.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Sir, there's only one word in this that drew my attention: policy uncertainty. Now I want to ask the DA, are you sure of your policy certainties? Are you Unitarianism or are you federal? Thanks. So if you are federal, stop being like a trailer attached to a car with no brakes and an unqualified driver. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me first of all say, if you are federal, I can see you've got a lot of youngsters here, but they must be controlled. If you are for federalism, and I want to say, are you capitalist or pro-poor? Okay? Do you fight for individual rights or for minority rights? Okay. Are you preserving Christian values and norms or classic liberalism? You shut up, you can't answer. Mr. Chairman, let me tell you how badly the DA spent money National gave them. Where's your Minister of Health? Okay, 2017, 2018, you underspent 18 million on nurse training. 3.3 million you underspent on bursary allocations. 135 less bursaries you awarded to would-be nursing students. You underspent a total of 23 million, and then you blame the national government. And for 2 consecutive years, your Minister of Health underspent 51.5 million rand on health. Underspent. And they rewarded her by making a minister again this year.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. Your time is up.
Oh, my
Thank
time
you.
is up.
Honorable Mitchell.
Chair, I realize that the member's time.
Honorable, all right. Thank you. We can't have two honorable members on the floor. Honorable Minister Mbombo, will you please allow the Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the ruling party to say something? He has a point of order.
Yes, it was actually a point of order. Chair, Speaker, I want you to rule on Rule 44 because that was completely irrelevant to the topic today.
If he has the next opportunity, I will do so. Honorable Minister Mbombo.
Thank you for sponsoring the topic, Honorable Speaker, because this topic resonates well with the Department of Health, where it comes at a time when we're undergoing a major health reforms in the country, and also, as you are aware, that any policy that is being implemented will affect any Department of Health. Department of Health is the biggest procurer compared to all other departments here in the province. We spend around 32% on the goods and services. Even other examples that I can make, for example, a policy on transport or a policy on safety will impact on health because we have got the road fatalities, we have the crime, where we have to absorb all of those, and both, they take a huge portion of our budget. We are the recipients and absorb all social ills. Any budget cuts will impact on us. Honorable Speaker, but I want to zoom on some of the few other aspects. When we talk about the health, we are talking about we have to strengthen the whole health systems in order to be able to absorb all of those. When we talk about the health system, we are talking about the human resource system, leadership and governance system, health financing system, health information technology system, availability of medicine system, and actually the actual comprehensive packages of service. It is against this background that you will understand that whatever national policy that comes across, it will impact on us, as mentioned above. Speaker, I want only to mention only three: the human resource policy system, and also the piloting of the NHI, and thirdly, the money bill. The national government introduced a 3-year salary increase plan for the public servants without providing additional funding. And that placed provinces in a difficult position as they have to find ways of getting funds for these salaries. I must add that anyone will be naive not to promote that public servants must get an increase in the salaries. But for the provinces, this is an unfunded mandate. Now we're sitting in a situation where we've got a limitation in terms of increasing the staff numbers beyond the budget envelope. Our staff are working under severe pressure, but we'll find that we're unable to extend that. Secondly, phase 1 of the NHI, because now we're talking about the phase 2. Phase 1 was introduced 5 years ago, 2012 to 2017, and recently there's been an evaluation of those. And what was the focus of the phase 1? It was about the community health workers, school health system, the availability of the GPs, the district clinical specialist team, the patient registration system using the technology, the availability of the medicine, the infrastructure, and the staffing issues. If I could report now, Speaker, it's about all of those 12 districts where these were tested, the whole of it all have failed. There have been the lack of coordination, insufficient mechanism to monitor the progress, to ensure the course correction, the lack of resources that has impacted not only in the Western Cape, where we have been piloting in the Eden district, but throughout all the provinces. And what is the reason beyond that? It shows that the centralized government decision-making in healthcare has demonstrated the shortcomings. And we still have got the budget and expenditure around the NHI, where now the president was saying that he's giving a HR stimulus package to the provinces to increase the staff, yet these are the monies that were in terms of under expenditure from the NHI. Honorable Speaker, I want to stress that Western Cape government supports the principle of universal health coverage, which aims to improve access to good quality health care and removing financial hardship in the process of acquiring care. The NHI-1 pilot made a recommendation that for the next phase of the NHI, it must be to strengthen the health systems. And if you look at the NHI bill, there's nothing that talks about the health system. There's nothing that talks about the quality of care. We also support the reassessment of the allocation of resources from both the private and the public sector to optimally address the health needs of the population, and also to introduce the mechanisms and incentivize to improve the efficiencies and service delivery. That we do support. However, this also impacts on the third policy that is imposed on us, on the money bill. Currently, we're talking about in this MTEF, the reduction of our budget in health, which goes to 1.3 billion rands. And the 1.3 billion equates to the budget of the 3 hospitals, the Khayelitsha Hospital, the Kalbrima Hospital, the Mitchells Plain. Meaning, if this 1.3 billion cuts is going to happen, it means one might end up closing those hospitals. There's an uncertainty if you look in terms of what is happening, if you look at the bill, on the role of the provinces. The provincial equitable share, what the NHI bill says, is that in order to fund the NHI, they have to reduce the equitable share, which is already in the previous MTEF, we have seen the reduction of about 650 million from us. Also, they will reduce the conditional grants, which, for example, is over 18.5 billion for the MTEF. Now, the Speaker, if now we have got all these reductions, how will we be able to respond to the challenges that we have in terms of the long waiting and so forth? But yet, they still continue the bailing the SOEs. They keep on bailing the ESCOM. That's the ESCOM who contributed to the load shedding that we saw in our hospitals, that we have to come up with plan Bs in order to make sure that patients do not suffer. Honorable Speaker, over the years, this province has built a solid relationship with the private partners, which enables us to deliver on our promise of quality health for all. These partnerships are the cornerstone for universal health coverage, and no health system can do it alone. That's why the Western Cape is leading when it comes to a whole-of-society approach with a collaboration with other departments. In addition to that, already we are testing universal health coverage with the Eastern Cape Department, with the Eastern Cape Province Health Department, where we can be able to collaborate addressing the determinants of health, which the NHI bill lacks in terms of the community involvement and also addressing the social determinants of health. On the 5th of September, we will have a consultative engagement meeting to improve the health towards universal health coverage. We have extended invitation to everyone, including the NGOs, that shows our commitment, UHC, that is the need to ensure access to quality health care and the financial risk protection. We welcome UHC to address the equity, quality of care, and access to care. But what we do not accept is when we are centralization of the services, where the national has to take over the provinces, leaving all patients behind. We are saying that national, if they want to fix the health system, they must fix it now, instead of pulling the funds and centralizing them. They have to bail the health system. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize the Honorable Member Tiacher.
Honorable Speaker, government debt as a percentage of DGP is used by investors to measure a country's ability to make future payments on its debt. South Africa recorded a staggering government debt equivalent of 55.8% of the country's GDP in 2018, close quote. Honorable Speaker, things can get much worse if this mounting debt continues to be met with policy uncertainty. Uncertainty that remains a concern across all sectors of the economy and the impact thereof affecting service delivery to poor households and small businesses. The poor and small businesses in particular feel the brunt of high electricity. The single most negative factor in the economy, the effects caused by the risk that state-owned enterprise ESCOM pose to public finances. This is also evident in the typical, the Western Cape's own city of Cape Town finds themselves in. No two wrongs don't make it right. Furthermore, oversight roles on SOEs needs to improve. We need to stop sitting back and watch national governments spend taxpayers' money reckless under our noses. Or it is merely, and I quote, a case of decision had already been taken that the view of the dominant political party will be adhered to. Our people are facing real issues and we need to come together so that the delivery of services can take place in a coordinated way. Secondly, let's take off the blinkers. The Western Cape is far from front of National Treasury's queue. According to Stats SA, the population of the Western Cape was 6.3 million in 2016 to 11.3 million. Immigration now accounts for significant 70% of SA's population growth. The total stock of immigrants accounts for only about 7% of the SA population, and the Western Cape continues to receive a high number of unaccounted for immigrants from neighboring countries, which puts severe strain on service delivery. National government needs to assess the detrimental impact.
Honorable Tiaga, you need to wrap up.
That immigration policy has on provinces so that allocations be made where it matters most. Ultimately, all three spheres of government, national, provincial, and local government, serve the same people. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Speaker. The financial crisis of 2007 and 8, also known as the global financial crisis, and the 2008 financial crisis, was a severe worldwide economic crisis considered by many economists to have been the most serious financial crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s, to which it is often compared. This was followed by the end of the global commodity supercycle, which came to an end in 2012, sharply lowering the price of oil, gas, metals, and minerals. Dependence on natural resource exports has made nearly half of the sub-Saharan South African countries vulnerable, one way or the other, to the ongoing decline in commodity prices. What both these major events have in common has been the rise of the doom and gloom naysayers. This article of Claire Biesecker is a classic example of such opportunism to spark fear and panic, since there has been a post-2009 and a 2012 audience for this area. Would you think it is an Africa problem? On August 12, 2019, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has promised to create 10,000 new prison places and expand stop and search powers in a bid to crack down on the dramatic rise in doomsaying, devastation, dealing and capitalism retailing in the UK towns and cities. He further stated, "We need to come down hard on pessimism, purveyors and devastation dealers in the misery merchants, and show the feral gangs of Project Fear that there are sunlight uplands, free Kool-Aid, and unicorns for all who truly believe." Member Wenger, you have chosen the 3rd edition of the Project Fear, which was first started in December 2015 by the author on the verge of fiscal suicide. Can SA pull back from the brink? That was also a front page cover on the Financial Mail. The 2nd edition of Project Fear was a book titled On the Brink, South Africa Political Fiscal Cliffhanger. This book is struggling to sell. This book is struggling to sell since Ramaphosa became president of South Africa. The Democratic Alliance knows this all well. Just last year, Musi Maimane was caught off guard when his Cape Town Press Club audience challenged him about his election campaign. What do you have to offer? Investors have confidence in Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency. A diplomat went as far as saying, business under Cyril Ramaphosa is ready to shift. Member Wenger, your sponsored topic is the 3rd edition from the privileged author who writes books and puts them on the front of pages of magazines. She is economist, editor of all. What the doomsayers or misery merchants, as Boris Johnson refers to them as triggers in the counter-narrative of we are going to be all right. It's not all doom and gloom. SA is bruised and battered, but still standing. February, and why living in SA isn't all doom and gloom.
Let us please conduct ourselves orderly. There's a point of order, Honorable Smith. Will you please take your seat?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like you to rule on the fact that Member Smith is actually doing his maiden speech. So I would request that he be afforded with the same respect as everyone else.
Thank you, Honorable Lecker. Honorable the Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there's a convention in the House. It is true that any member that is delivering his or her maiden speech may not be interrupted, but there's a rider in that. On condition that the speech, yes, on condition that the speech is not provocative, and it's not the case with Member Smith. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Minister Matikiza. All right, honorable members, I also want to draw attention to Rule 40, that as much as you want to interject, but let us not do so in such a way that a member is not audible as we listen. And I think I've said it earlier, but I thought I must draw your attention to the rules because it's how we operate here in the House. I hear the Pope Khantans. May I request the Honorable Smith to please take your podium.
My time, thank you, Speaker. Member Wenger, your sponsored topic in this...
You must please address the Speaker, Honorable Member.
Honorable Speaker, Member Wenger, your sponsored topic in this third edition from the privileged author who writes books and put them on the front page of magazines she is the Economist editor of. What the doomsayers is misery merchants, as Boris Johnson refers to them as the triggers in the counter-narrative of we are going to be all right. It's not all doom and gloom. A decade ago, half of the nation was caught up in the World Cup doubters. South Africa's ability to host a World Cup event with reference to the countries never be able to do it, or Blatter's Plan B, or Aussies on standby, or Germany is a secret venue, apart from a select few who are prepared to get up and do something. Most South Africans become experts at the practice of failure. Today, the 2010 World Cup in South Africa features amongst the best tournaments ever hosted. National Treasury has been consistently applying fiscal prudence through various consolidation measures. Treasury has indeed tightened the belt, and in early 2019, they were accused by Budget Justice Coalition that Treasury has introduced austerity measures in fiscal policy over the past 5 years. This was reflected in the fact that non-interest expenditure had not increased in line with revenue growth. Speaker, in response, Treasury's acting DDG for the Budget Office, Ian Stewart, unpacked the structure of government spend over the medium term. He said the expenditure ceiling had been introduced in 2012, and expenditure growth had declined substantially compared to patterns observed in the mid-2000s. It's not austerity, Stewart says. This is how responsible Treasury has been with the purse. They have been accused of austerity measures, not this nonsense of unraveling or sovereignty crisis by approaching the IMF and being prescribed how to run the country and its finances. The DA would love to peddle information, spread rumors that South Africa PTY is in liquidation and needs a bailout. Stop being devastation dealers and misery merchants and govern the Western Cape. No one is celebrating or promoting the murder capital of Africa, Cape Town, which has been labeled worse than war-torn countries on the continent. No one is asking people to pack up and leave. Deal with the socio-economic
order. Honorable Member, you need to wrap up.
Deal with the socio-economic crisis and service delivery crisis in municipalities and the provincial government. And Mr. Premier, please, maybe you must appoint younger MECs because your MECs is getting old
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Smith. Honorable members, order. Order, honorable members. I now recognize the Minister of Finance and Economic Opportunities, Honorable Mainier.
Thank you, Speaker. It's very disappointing and a great pity to hear the Honourable Brett Herron consider and refer to this debate on the collapse of the economy, which has caused so many people to lose their jobs, a waste of time. Which brings me to the Honourable Murray. It's rich taking a question on policy certainty from the Honourable Peter Murray, who has been a member of virtually every political party in this country, and which raises the question of whether he
Everybody
has any
wanted me,
policy
that's why.
The Honourable...
Honourable Minister, will you please take your seat? I have not recognized you yet, Honourable Member.
Yeah,
I now recognize
I haven't
you.
spoken yet, Speaker. No,
Honourable Mitchell.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I want you to rule because it's surely not parliamentary for a member to switch on the microphone and just start speaking. And also, we can't hear the minister responding. So if you can please just protect the minister.
I think, let me simply say this. I've said it before in this House. If an honourable member of this House wants to speak and you are not on the speaker's list and you want to interject, the only way to do so as a heckling exercise, it's without your mic, and then you are safe. I'm sure Honourable Maran will remember this. But we do so without... No, I'm just saying...
I abide by your ruling, sir. Thank you.
Now, Honourable Murray seems to be coping that. I remember I dealt with it the other day. But you are not a culprit today. You are safe, sir. Thank you. Honourable Murray, thank you for that. Are we now ready, honourable members? I recognize Honourable Mania.
Thank you, Speaker. I am delighted to see that finally, after all these years, the Honourable Peter Murray now does seem to have some policy certainty. Now, the Honourable Itzhak Diacha made a solid contribution, but I couldn't help noticing that he invented a new economic metric, DGDP, which I must thank him for and which I'm intrigued by. Which brings me, of course, to the Honourable Danville Smith, and I'd like to congratulate you on your maiden speech. But I couldn't help noting your shift to the right, quoting Boris Johnson, of all people, so approvingly. Which brings me to the Honourable Mvimbi. I'd also like to congratulate you, sir, on your maiden speech. But unfortunately, you symbolize why South Africa is unraveling. You reject all the very good proposals contained in this article. You refuse to cut expenditure. You refuse to shut down state-owned enterprises, which of course raises the question about whether the honourable member is in a different faction in the governing party compared to the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, who of course is committed to shutting down South African Airways. And although, to his credit, the honourable member might not be a fan of prescribed assets, there didn't seem to be any steel, and he didn't seem to be opposing prescribed assets, and he appears, in fact, to support the raiding of private and public pension funds in order to bail out state-owned enterprises in South Africa. Speaker, to underline the point, we are in deep economic trouble in South Africa. We have stagnant economic growth, with the economy forecast to grow at an average of about 1.5% over the medium term. We have declining per capita incomes as population growth exceeds the economic growth rate, which means the poor are getting poorer. We have staggering levels of unemployment, with 9.9 million people who do not have jobs or who have given up looking for jobs in South Africa. We have zombie state-owned enterprises like South African Airways consuming billions of rands in bailouts. We have eye-watering debt levels, with national debt now set to exceed the estimated 3.4 trillion rand, or 59% of GDP in 2021-22. What this means is that in 2021-22, we will be spending 247 billion rand on debt service costs, which is about $1 billion more than we spent on basic education last year in 2018-19 in South Africa. We are, contrary to what the Honourable Smith believes, in ICU. And then we have the biggest threat to the economy, consuming 59 billion rand
Point of order,
in
Mr. Chair.
bailouts, which of course is ESCOM.
Honourable Minister, will you please take your seat? Honourable Murray, what's your point of order, sir?
I'd like to know, when he say we, sir, is he referring to the national parliament or the provincial parliament? Who's we?
What is your point of order?
A point of order is he realistic?
Which rule?
Okay. I know the rules, sir, that's why I took a minute of his time.
All right. I'm sure the minister will respond to you, but I had to emphasize on the rule because I want all of us to begin to use the rules. I'm sure you've noted that, honourable members. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. When I use the term we, I quite evidently don't include that honourable member. We, Speaker, the fact is that ESCOM is in a death spiral and has a staggering debt mountain of 441 billion rand, which will cost 69 billion rand in debt service costs this year, which is about R1 billion more than the provincial budget this year in the Western Cape. Think about that. We will be spending 69 billion rand on debt service costs for ESCOM, which is R1 billion more than the provincial budget in the Western Cape. South Africa is indeed unraveling. And of course, we have rating agencies circling us like sharks, with Moody's Investor Services about to push the red button and downgrade our sovereign credit rating to junk status in South Africa, which of course will result in a giant sucking sound as capital moves out of South Africa. We need an economic growth and recovery plan. However, what do we have? We have land expropriation without compensation. We have nationalization of the Reserve Bank, and we have prescribed assets in South Africa. Don't listen to me. Listen to the ANC's economic policies are...
Honourable Minister, will you please take your seat? There is a point of order. I recognize Honourable Maran.
It's just a question of clarity. Is the word suck parliamentary? I'm just asking. Suck what?
All right. Thank you very much. The Minister, thank you very much, Honourable Maran. The Minister has got an opportunity using Rule 65 to explain himself. But it's one word that means so many things. I want to be schooled. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. The ANC's economic policies are this weekend said, and I quote, "Why should you go to the IMF and the World Bank and go and raise money when we have sufficient savings in the economy, which we can borrow probably at a far cheaper
Honourable
rate?"
Minister. All right, honourable members, please help me. What's your point of order, Honourable
Speaker,
Smith?
you requested the MEC to give clarity based on the rules. So the MEC...
Thank you, Honourable Smith. Honourable Minister, in terms of Rule 65, you may explain what you meant by the specific word. There's only one speaker on the floor, and there's only one Minister Mania, so can he only speak for himself?
Thank you, Speaker. It's merely a term suggesting the capital in large volumes may leave South Africa in the event of a sovereign credit ratings downgrade.
Thank you, Honorable Mania. You may proceed with your speech, sir.
Thank you, Speaker.
I hope it is clear to the Honorable Mara.
And of course, this statement suggests that the governing party actually is thinking of raiding private and public pension funds in order to bail out national government and zombie state-owned enterprises in South Africa. And of course, worse, we have state banks, we have sovereign wealth funds, we have debt relief, we have national insurance, all seemingly dreamt up at the How to Wreck Your Own Economy Hugo Chavez School of Economics. Now, we in the Western Cape have worked hard to create an environment for the private sector in the markets to drive economic growth and job creation, and as a result have the lowest unemployment rate in South Africa. But the full horror of the national government's mismanagement of the economy, mismanagement of our public finances, and mismanagement of our state-owned enterprises will have major implications in the form of deep budget cuts, which risk severely compromising service delivery in the Western Cape. We now face budget cuts of 5% or 2.8 billion rand in 2021. 6% or 3.5 billion rand in 2021-22, and 7% or 4.3 billion rand in 2022-23. We are committed to fighting these budget cuts tooth and nail, and for that reason I have already written to the Minister of Finance informing him that the budget cuts are unaffordable, unrealistic, and will compromise frontline service delivery in the Western Cape. We must now face the fact that the economic crisis or the South Africa's unraveling is not caused by some kind of third force or the global financial crisis, but by government's mismanagement of our economy in South Africa. The root cause of the problem is that we have a national government that is pro-growth and anti-business at the same time in South Africa. We have, to put it simply, a national government that loves milk but hates cows. Now, the article in the Financial Mail, the South Africa's Great Unraveling, ends with a question: can the economy be saved? And the answer to the question is yes, but not as long as the governing party is governing South Africa. Because the fact is that the politics is killing the economics. And in the end, to quote another article in this week's Financial Mail, the brains that brought, I beg your pardon, the brains that created our problems cannot be the brains that will solve them. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you, honorable Minister Menia. That concludes this specific debate and the subject at hand. We are now, in terms of Rule 197, dealing with the interpellations. And the first interpellation is by Honorable Maseko to Honorable Minister Simmers. I recognize Honorable Simmers.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to Member Maseko for the question. Member Maseko, an unrest occurred at Forest Village on the 28th of May 2019, just after 8:30 p.m. in the evening, supposedly led by Mfuleni backyarders. It is alleged that they were unhappy about beneficiaries from outlying areas who were being relocated to Forest Village. They damaged several units while also invading certain other units. Initially, it was thought that only 100 doors were damaged. But upon final assessment, it turned out that they damaged 283, which is a cost of more than 1 million rand. Included in this amount are materials and tools stolen from the storeroom, which is valued at over 140,000 rand. This can only be described as thuggery, Speaker, which I will continue to condemn in the strongest possible terms. We are not a lawless country or a banana republic, and we won't allow ourselves to become one. It's becoming crystal clear that there are groups who are led by so-called community leaders, with the support of so-called senior politicians even sitting in this chamber, who are attempting to disturb the peace in our communities. Criminal cases have been opened with the police. These illegal and criminal activities hampers the delivery of houses to the very people that need it the most, Speaker. Our particular focus is on the most vulnerable and needy in our communities to ensure that they are prioritized for housing delivery. Beneficiaries from the airport precinct, the N2 Gateway Access, and Ward 17, 16, 108 and 114 are all beneficiaries that will benefit from this project. We remain committed to accelerating human settlements delivery while promoting social inclusion through the development of integrated, resilient and sustainable human settlements in an open society, and will not allow thug-like behavior to divert us from this. I can confirm that the damages to the units have been repaired.
I now recognize Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I thank Minister for their inputs and equally condemn the destruction and damage you stated. I understand that housing opportunities and human settlements delivery continue to be in high demand, which often leads to frustration and unhappiness when communities feel that they are either not being listened to, not adequately supplied with relevant and correct information, or sometimes even not allowed to air their grievances at all. What I would like the Minister to further take this House into his confidence, Speaker, is to whether or not he or his department has spoken or interacted with the affected community on and since the occupation. It would also be very welcomed, Honorable Speaker, if the Minister would elaborate on what information was given to the community during these interactions and how he or his department continue to engage with the community affected. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Maseko. I now recognize Honorable Lily.
Honorable Minister Simas, Speaker, I'm sorry. Are you blaming?
You must address
the
Speaker.
Honorable Speaker,
member.
I'm asking a question through you to Minister Simas. Is he really blaming and calling or labeling the backyarders thugs? Whereas, as a minister in that department, he understands the frustration and the backlog which his predecessor has been talking about for some time, whilst he was the Minister of Human Settlement. My question to him, Mr. Speaker, is he really blaming them? Is he really serious calling them thugs? Can he go to that extent? Understanding, the conditions of backyard dwellers, not only in the Cape Town, but across the Western Cape. Because some backyard dwellers has been there since early 90s. So is he really blaming them and can even go further calling them thugs?
Thank you, Honorable Member Lily. I now recognize Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I thought that honorable member that side understand what is it all about, why this interpellation. There's no way that we can promote criminality. Yes, every community will say that there is a housing that we are in need of, but the criminality factor, I don't think there can be any honorable member here and promote and say that you have to explain about criminality. This is another form of criminality. The most important thing that we have to put in mind is that, which is a concern to me, is that there is a cost involved in damages, repairs and replacement of...
Honorable Maseko, will you please take your seat? Honorable members, remember this is a debate. Let us allow the honorable member to respond and participate in the manner in which she is doing. If there is something you don't like, there is still a debate. If you don't get it now, next time. But let us allow this, because it's the spirit of the debate. The member is within her right to respond the manner in which she does. Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, again, I'm saying that there's no way that it can be possible that an honorable member in this House, can agree to criminality that happens out there. I know, because
Speaker.
there are honorable members
Honorable
in this
Speaker.
House. They will never agree to
Honorable
criminality
Speaker.
that is happening.
Order, Honorable Maseko.
Honorable Speaker,
Yes, Honorable
I
Lily.
thought, Honorable Speaker, you are really going to interject or correct the honorable member by misquoting me, suggesting that I'm even encouraging a word that I've never used. Please, Mr. Speaker, protect me, please, from the honorable member over there.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Lily. By the way, it's correct what we have done. I don't know what the merits of the statements made. Rule 65 allows that next time for clarity, so that you explain yourself, so that there's no misquoting or confusion about what you may or may not have said. Sitting here, I want to encourage robust conversation and robust debate. May I now allow Honorable Maseko?
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, you will have to help me. I'm still saying there's no way there can be a member in here. I'm proud of our members in this House. There's no way there can be a member in this House that can promote criminality out there. And I can stand for them. They've taken an oath. That's what I said, and I'm standing to my words. Now, that being said, invasion was criminality. The frustration of the communities, we have to recognize it. And we have to ask ourselves that how much conversation is happening within the beneficiaries and the departments. And that's where we have to do the oversight. And we have to acknowledge that there is a cost that is involved when that is happening. And that's why me and my honorable member of the opposition, we're sitting on oversight to say to Minister, we can't have wasted expenditure because there was no any conversation with the communities.
Thank you, Honorable Maseko. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. Member Maseko, I'll first respond to your question and then Member Lily. Because this is a caring government, Member Maseko, and part of caring is listening, I can report to this House and take into my confidence that we have had engagements with all beneficiaries and clarified the criteria which ultimately form the basis of unhappiness that were being used to ensure that residents are afforded a housing opportunity. But I personally visited and had meetings with the residents of Ward 16, 17 and 108 to elect project steering committees as well, because we want, as government, want to deal with recognized leaders of a community, not piecemeal leadership. So that we would know, firstly, that they are legitimate leaders, and to ensure that no misinformation about the project is being shared, as was being done by this group. These wards comprise of communities such as Forest Village, East River South, Electric City, Foray, Dreamworld, Driftsons, Kleinvlei, which is an area I visited, Rosedale, Forest Heights, Hillcrest Heights, Tuscany Glen, Malibu Village, which I also visited, the Conivers, Fairdale, Fountain Village in Mfuleni, which I also visited. Ek praat nie net, ek doen, Speaker. I'm also pleased to inform this House that every second week, after we have now put these structures in place, except for the last 2 weeks, we have managed to deliver a maximum of 25 units to beneficiaries in consultation with these project steering committees. And upon completion, Speaker, in December 2020, it is expected to yield in excess of 4,500 housing opportunities for the people of the Western Cape, with more than 1,700 people from the surrounding communities I've just highlighted, which will ultimately be true beneficiaries. Now, Member Lily, when I started off, I said that supposedly led by Mfuleni backyarders for a specific reason, because I knew you were going to jump onto that. Now, people with genuine needs, Member Lily, work through formal structures. So you really do not care, and your history does not prove that. And the reason why I chose supposedly led by Mfuleni Backyarders member Lily, because when I engaged the beneficiaries of Mfuleni on that Saturday to re-establish their PSC, you know what their own words were? Minister Simmons, we do not even know these people. Many of them who were leaders in this protest are not even backyarders. Now, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Simmons. That concludes this interpellation. I now move to the next interpellation by Honorable Nkondlo to Minister of Finance and Economic Development. I recognize Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. We have worked hard to create an enabling environment for the private sector and for markets to drive economic growth and job creation, and as a result have the lowest unemployment rate in South Africa. However, despite that, we do have too many people, many of whom are young people, who do not have jobs or have given up looking for jobs in the Western Cape. We recognize that the township economy and the rural town economy are important and must be part of our plan so that we can create even more jobs, especially for young people in the Western Cape. We have to date established an economic war room which is focused on eliminating obstacles to economic growth in various sectors of our economy, including informal light manufacturing, which includes small-scale manufacturing businesses in townships in the Western Cape. We have established an SMME booster fund, which is focused on supporting institutions that support entrepreneurs and small businesses in the township economy and rural town economy in the Western Cape. We have also established a market store program, which is focused on providing grant funding to small businesses in order to expand and convert retail space into independent mini supermarkets in townships in the Western Cape. We have supported the establishment, for example, of market stores in Guguletu, Nyanga, Blue Downs, and Mbekweni, which have created about 90 jobs for people, many of whom are young people in the Western Cape. What a privilege it was for me to have the opportunity to open the Mbekweni market store, which is a state-of-the-art mini supermarket now employing about 30 young people in Mbekweni outside Paarl. When we were opening the market store, the local ward councillor, who was a member of the ANC, expressed things so well when he told young people, many of whom were first-time employees, that a job will take you somewhere in life. We have also established the Western Cape Entrepreneurship Recognition Awards, which are focused on recognizing the achievements and the passions and the talents of entrepreneurs in township economies and rural economies in the Western Cape. And in fact, last week, I visited a previous winner of these awards, Eden All Natural, which is run by Debbie Matake, who started manufacturing peanut butter in her kitchen and now manages a team of 12 people supplying peanut butter to Pick n Pay, Spar, and many other major retailers in the Western Cape. Winning the award not only drove awareness of the All Eden Natural brand, but the prize money allowed Eden All Natural to buy equipment necessary to increase production and employ more people in the Western Cape. We have done much to support the township economy and rural economy in the Western Cape, but there's more work to be done on growing the township economy and the rural economy in the Western Cape. And I look forward to listening to your ideas and working with you on doing exactly that, growing the township economy and the rural town economy in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Menia. I now recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ANC-led Gauteng provincial government has led the country in expanding and developing the township economy as well as the economies of our rural areas. That provincial government has identified that by 2030, the township economy alone will contribute at least 30% of the province GDP. I'm making reference to Gauteng province because I've realized that most of the members, sometimes they always like to refer to Comrade David Makura. He has become their favorite premier, yeah. So I thought that it will be relevant. The priority is set as to make practical the idea of inclusive growth. And these economies, that small to medium enterprises, are just some of the examples of enterprises that are small and medium in size, but are billion rands industries of their own. At the same time, these economies also open the possibility for promotion of innovation and indigenous knowledge system, as well as the chance for the Western Cape Provincial government to procure locally. The reality, of course, Deputy Speaker, is that this government's priority is only traditional economies which are largely controlled by and in the hands of a few. You might have made an example about Pick n Pay, but you'll find that that Pick n Pay is still owned by people that are not from Begwin. If you can look into the ownership of that, you will find that though the person, they must still just be putting Pick n Pay in all the township, but those Pick n Pay are not owned by people from Begwin. It will be different with Pick n Pay that is at the center of town. The Pick n Pay of the center of town will be prioritizing economies which are largely controlled by and are in the hands of few. This Western Cape Provincial government presses emphasis on the CBD instead of exploring and supporting economic opportunities within our township and rural areas. This provincial government believes in leaving everything to the attitude of the market, and as a result, past pockets of privileges continues unabated. The problem of depending on the market economy, you are actually at the mercy of the market, and most of the time, the market has got no mercy for the poor. It only looks after the interests of the rich.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now move on to Honourable Bartman. Order. Order.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'm happy that Honourable Wimby mentioned Gauteng. I did a bit of research on Gauteng, and in the beginning of February 2019, both the Western Cape Department of Economic Development and Tourism, as well as the National Human Resource Science Research Council, did research on township economies, and one of the provinces that were researched were Gauteng. One of the findings of that report was that in the 11,000 township enterprises across 9 township sites in 4 provinces, including Gauteng, liquor, grocery, and food service represented 54% of all township businesses. Unfortunately, the taxi industry only made up 2% of the entire enterprise. However, as per this report, it did indicate that in terms of township and rural economies, it is very important for enterprise, placemaking, and social fabric to be interwoven. Through the Deputy Speaker, could the Minister please provide more information on the revitalization initiative involving the conversion of existing spaza shops within townships into independently owned mini supermarkets, and how we can replicate this success? Further, Deputy Speaker, if the Minister could please indicate the impact that ICANN centres in the Western Cape have had on informal areas and how these centres can assist communities into the digital age. Recently, also, the department briefed as part of the department's programs on SMME booster programs. If the Minister could please just indicate how the funding and infrastructure is impacting on informal areas through this project. And finally, Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is my understanding that Westcro, as part of the department's entities, has made a submission to the National Parliament on the Draft Tourism Amendment Bill, known locally as the Kill Airbnb Bill. Airbnb recorded 110% growth in rural towns outside Cape Town in 2018. Can the Minister, Honourable Deputy Speaker, please indicate what the impact of this bill would be on the Western Cape if it were implemented? I thank you.
Thank you very much. I see the Honourable Meheran.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I assume that when the Honourable Minister spoke about creating an enabling environment, that this included mobility and access to and from townships for residents and visitors. So the City of Cape Town has allowed the MyCity service to come to a grinding halt to and from Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain because they failed to negotiate a new contract. And the MyCity service was providing about 3.5 million passenger trips in a quarter, and we're nearly at a quarter, so we've lost about 3.5 million passenger trips on that MyCity service. And then in George, the province has decided to postpone the rollout of Go George to Thembeletu. And so there we have the residents of Thembeletu who are also denied public transport access and mobility. So I'm wondering, what impact does the minister consider when his government, his provincial government and his city government force township residents to spend 4 to 6 times more on public transport to get to and from these township areas? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Heron. I see the Honourable Mvimbi.
Look, Honourable Minister, Speaker, through you, I like the example that you have made around the issues of township, but it will be interesting if maybe you can just give an indication, because there are many of these supermarkets in the township. There's a lot of them. On the same number, you've got supermarkets or malls, so they call them, in various townships throughout the Western Cape. I can make an example. There's a mall in George, in Thembeletu. It will just be interesting just to find out, maybe even not for this sitting, but for future, just who are the ownership. And then you take that ownership and you compare with the Pick and Pay from George at the center of town. Who owns that Pick and Pay? And you will find that most of the ownership is 100% owned by people not from that area. I know there are other instances where Can I
continue, please, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much. So, because the only way we can actually deal with this skewed pattern of ownership is to actually make sure that we empower people that are from that area. You might find that when they are going to open the mall in the township, they don't actually employ people from the township. They will transfer a staff from another area because they say that those people from that area don't have an experience. But you might be creating job, but you are not creating job from the people that are from that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognise the Minister. Minister Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I want to reiterate the fact that we recognise that the township economy and the rural economy are important and must be part of our plan going forward, so that we can create more jobs for people, especially young people in the Western Cape. I think the Honourable Mvimbi is wrong on the question of ownership, but I am interested in his reference to programs in the township economy in Gauteng. And certainly I will take a look at those programs, and if there's anything that we can learn, we will certainly take a look at those programs. The Honourable Member is also wrong when he says that there is a problem with our approach to the market. The truth is that if we had more market and less state, perhaps South Africa would in fact not be unravelling. The Honourable Bartman referred to the market store program and asked me to expand on it. And of course I'm delighted that we will be looking at partnering and extending this program and opening up to 8 more stores in the Western Cape during this financial year. The Honourable Member also referred to the ICANN centres, which I was not able to mention in my first contribution. But this, of course, is a very exciting program extending digital skills to young people. There's an excellent centre in Elsie's River, and I'm delighted to say that my department are looking at extending this program into the Platteland, into Saldanha, Berg River, and Bredasdorp. The Honourable Member also raised the question of the Tourism Amendment Bill, which honourable members may not know, is aimed at regulating short-term rentals and experiences available on digital platforms like Airbnb. I'm advised that the market for short-term rentals and experiences in townships and rural towns is vibrant and growing. And of course, I'm concerned that regulation of this sector may risk constraining rather than expanding opportunity in the short-term rental market and experience market in the township economies in the Western Cape. And we are going to have to be vigilant when it comes to that bill. The Honourable Heron mentioned mobility, which of course is very important, and he referred to the My City bus service, which, if I'm not mistaken, the Honourable Member was responsible for just a couple of months ago.
Order, please.
The Honourable Mvimbi then came back to his point about the markets. And let me reiterate that if we had more market and less state, perhaps South Africa would not be unraveling. Deputy Speaker, let me then close by reiterating a point that I made earlier. There is more work that needs to be done on growing the township economy and the rural town economy in the Western Cape. And we certainly look forward to listening to new ideas and innovative ideas and working with you on growing the township economy and growing economies in rural towns in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the end of interpellations. We will now deal with questions as printed on the question paper. I recognise the Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And thank you very much to the Honourable Mackenzie for the question. No, the intergovernmental dispute that was declared with the National Minister of SAPS on the 25th of April this year has not been resolved. It remains in place. However, Section 42 of the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act compels parties to first find and agree on an appropriate mechanism for procedure, other than that of judicial process, to settle such dispute. As such, Minister Fritz and Minister Bekele have agreed that the litigation process between the Social Justice Coalition and the Police Minister in the Equality Court, and in which our Minister of Community Safety is a part, is an appropriate mechanism for us to try to settle the dispute before launching our own independent litigation. I am advised this process has been formally sanctioned by the Equality Court. The parties to the case will now engage between themselves on SAPS a plan for potential remedies to the finding of the court in December 28's judgment that the current policing model is unfair to poor and black residents of the Western Cape. The court order has already recently been handed down, in terms of which SAPS's legal representatives have undertaken to provide the other parties to the litigation, including our Minister of Community Safety, with their proposed new resourcing allocation plan by no later than 1 December this year. Once we have been provided with this plan, we will be in a position to consider its contents and engage on this matter further with SAPS. Only once we are fully satisfied that SAPS is actively taking steps to improve resourcing in this province and make it safer will we drop the intergovernmental dispute. I very much look forward to the receipt of SAPS's new plan so that we can move our fight against crime in this province forward.
Thank you very much, Premier. I see the Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Premier, regarding the ongoing intergovernmental dispute, which we all know is on the policing matters, how are you being kept abreast on the latest development on the deployment of the army and the police in the massive fight against gangsterism? Since last week when I was in Mitchell's Plain, I saw the Minister Taylor there and the Deputy Minister of Police, but I didn't see you and Minister Fritz there.
Premier.
So that is an interesting comment coming from across the floor, and maybe I'll deal with it as I answer this question. I think, first of all, we, as a cabinet yesterday, received a full briefing from the intelligence agency, from the South African Police Services. We also had the prison services with us yesterday, and the judiciary represented. And the way I see it is this is the start of forming that committee that I would like to see on prioritising safety in this province. So we bring the parties to the table. Unfortunately, because the military say that they report directly to the President, they are not able to be in this space reporting. However, we did get some numbers via the acting Provincial Police Commissioner on specifically the Operation Lockdown that is in place at the moment. I really don't want to sort of put those numbers that they put on the table here into the legislature. I think that would come when the standing committee asks them for an oversight report, because they've asked us that some of the detail that was given to us remain secret, as it was part of that reporting mechanism. But perhaps on the second part of the question around whether this partnership that we are trying to build for a safer province is actually working, and it was very interesting to hear the comment coming out of the ANC benches to say that the minister and the deputy minister come to this province and do not engage with the premier, the MEC, the Department of Community Safety in this province by choice, is actually very pertinent, because it cannot be by choice. I mean, these are governments, and quite frankly, it is unacceptable if that is by choice.
Thank you. I see the honourable member.
Speaker, I'm rising on Rule 65, just to clarify myself and what I have said. Because the question from the honourable on the other side was,
The point of
why
order.
was the premier
The point of order.
and the minister not present?
1 minute, please.
And my
Honourable
response
member, 1
was-
minute per honourable member. If you can just take your seat. I see the chief whip.
Thank you,
Just 1 minute.
Deputy Speaker. The rules are very clear on Rule 65.
Order, members, just have a seat. Have a seat. Honourable members, if you could just give me a moment to hear the chief whip out. I will. There was a point of order. She has a right to. No, he's asking the premier a question. She's standing on a point of order. I'd like to hear the chief whip on a point of order. Please, she was first. I will hear you out afterwards. I recognise the chief whip.
Point of
No, first she was before you.
Speaker,
I'm
that
not
was a point of
recognizing
order.
you. No, there wasn't a point of order. He was speaking.
He did even mention
Member,
the Rule 65.
I have not recognized you. I'm first going to hear her out, and I will hear you after. Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My understanding is that the Honourable member did rise on a point of order in terms of Rule 65. However, he then proceeded to provide an explanation, but the rules are very clear that an explanation is only allowed with the consent of the presiding officer,
correct.
and you have not yet granted that consent.
That is absolutely correct. That is the rules.
Speaker,
Now I can hear. 1 minute.
Point of order.
Honourable members, if you'd like to address the chair and the speaker or the deputy speaker of the House, please stand. I now recognise you, sir, because you have now been first.
Speaker,
Wait.
but we have, Speaker,
Yes,
you have acknowledged me.
I've acknowledged.
You gave me the floor. So, Speaker, my response is that, to his question, is not that the minister or the deputy minister comes to this province by choice. No. The premier and the minister decided not to go. It was their choice to be there or not to be there. Yes.
But, Honourable Member, I'm not, as the Deputy Speaker of this House, debating the merits of the information that is being relayed by the Premier. Remember that? Okay? This is the information that the Premier is relaying. If you want to, you can ask the Premier a follow-up question, but then you must actually stand on a point of order. I recognise the Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Premier, regarding the intergovernmental dispute that we just talked about, and with reference in the dispute to poor performance from the police, how would you structure the police services going forward, and how would it look like, and how would you improve on that?
Thank you, Honourable Member, for that question. I think, first of all, I think it's known in this House that I do believe that provinces should have control of policing services, and that the oversight should be at a national level and not the other way around, because at the moment, control is at a national level, oversight is at a provincial level, and this leads to the across-the-floor interjection and the explanation of didn't attend by choice. In actual fact, but the by choice, and my answer was because we do not get invited by choice. And that is the problem. I actually was with the President on Tuesday and again handed the letter to the President that actually says that I, and the Honourable Member sitting over there waving his question paper, was in the room when I said to the Minister, Minister Bekele, that this whole government stands by as a true partner in making sure that we build this into a safer province. I said that we want to work with you. This has got nothing to do with the point of the question about how we think policing should change. That's a different question. Right now, policing is national police have control, and we have an oversight in the province. And I'm saying we want to play a role in making sure that this is a safer province. The minister declares that he wants to be a partner, but then he blatantly does exactly the opposite. Zero partnership, nothing, no invite. And you know what? In other provinces, it works in exactly the opposite way. Because when the minister goes to another province, he invites the MEC and the Premier in those provinces, and he does not do it in this province. And he still does not do it in this province. And I've just heard across the floor, and of course in question time, I can stand here as long as you like, but I heard, where's the proof? Well, I tell you what, you give me the counter proof, that show me the invitation, because the last time that he was challenged in public by the media was the Premier invited, he went, oh, and he obviously WhatsApped his office and said, you better send the invite. Well, an invite came to my office straight after that. And guess what the invite said? I'm inviting the Premier and the MEC of the Eastern Cape to meet me tomorrow in Port Elizabeth.
I can show you the WhatsApp that the minister sent.
Focus on the
So,
order. Order.
So it would be very nice, and I actually would like to use this.
Order, please.
And I would actually like to use this opportunity to put a challenge to the members of that House, to put a challenge to them to talk to their minister. First of all, ask their minister for a copy of any invite that he sent to any of us in this province, number one. And number two, in actual fact, let's remove this frivolous activity here, and let's actually put a challenge to the ANC to say, if we are serious about dealing with this massively high murder rate in this province, that we will do away with this funny, widdly, horrible party politics. Let's get down to building a partnership to making this province safer. Not come here with WhatsApps and no answers and by choice. That is rubbish. Absolute rubbish. People are dying every day in this province, and you must take some responsibility for that.
Thank you, Premier. Honourable Msego. Order, please.
No, thank you, Deputy Speaker. And in actual fact, I want to.
Order.
I want to agree with the Premier that this is not an issue that we need to play party politics with. And seeing that he agrees with the Equality Court finding in terms of the skewed allocation of resources, and that the poor are unfairly treated by the allocation of the resources. And having heard the Premier saying that they are going to be proactive, even though the mandate is not with them, we are going to play a role as a province. What steps has the Premier taken or is taking to propose, and not only wait for people to come and say, here is a proposal of the allocation of resources, but what steps is it taking to ensure that the skewed allocation of resources is changed from the affluent areas to the townships and the Cape Flats where they are needed the most?
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much. So obviously that question, and first of all, may I say thank you very much, because we need to remove the politics from this. We need to get down to dealing with creating a safer province for our people. So thank you very much, and I absolutely support you on that. So the first point on that question would be our provincial needs and priorities listing, which is where we have identified every single police station in this province, where the shortfalls are, where the needs are, where we should be prioritizing. And it is actual fact that document and those needs and priorities that were used in the court by the Social Justice Coalition to prove that there is insufficient resource and policing put into poor areas in this province. So that's the first thing. We are the ones that put that document together and provide it to the National Minister. We will provide it to the Standing Committee. We will make sure that that is actually what our job is. So first of all, we've done that job. That job and document was then used where the court came out and said insufficient resources to poor and mainly black communities. The second thing is that over and above the oversight role, what we have done is in the last we have made extra funding available at a national level, to a national level for reservists. We've made our officials in government available to relieve police officers so that they can actually get out there into the streets to do crime fighting instead of administrative work. And we have made money available across the board for various operations, both to national, but also we've put money into local authorities for dog units, for bolstering extra units at municipal policing levels. We've made our traffic policing available also to fight crime. But I want to say that, that I think that we even can go further than that. And now I'm speaking out of a meeting that I had with the National Police Commissioner, General Satole, and in that meeting I said to him, Commissioner, you know what I don't understand? What I don't understand is that time after time we stand up in the legislature and we talk about a police station in a real crime hotspot, one of these 10 identified hotspot areas where we have massive murder rates, or one of the areas identified by the Social Justice Coalition court case that says it is totally under-resourced in Nyanga, for example. And then we stand up and make politics here and say it's totally over-resourced in Claremont or Camps Bay. I said, Police Commissioner, why don't you move resources? Why don't you take resources from an area that has too many and put them into an area that has too few, because that's your job. It's not my job. I've put that on the table. I've said, why don't you engage with us to say, what should we do is take perhaps some Claremont resource away. Let's put that Claremont resource into Nyanga. And then, because there will be a gap in Claremont, but the crime might be different, why don't we then say, let's talk to law enforcement, let's talk to traffic, let's talk to the province or the city to say, can we then perhaps fill that gap with some law enforcement officers? Or can we even fill that gap with some of our provincial officials to do the administration work? I've put that on the table for discussion. But at the end of the day, those decisions are made by the National Commissioner, the Provincial Commissioner, and given policy direction by the Minister. And it's there. We are waiting for it. And that's why we have indicated that we will support the Social Justice Coalition in this court case so that we can get proper resourcing. And if we get proper resourcing, both commitment to resourcing and putting the resources in the right place that make the best effect to bring down crime in this province, well, then we will then, as the question, then look at how we can actually withdraw this intergovernmental dispute.
Thank you, Premier. Okay, that's the end of that question. We move on to question 2. Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. This question is from the Honourable Nkondlo and actually follows up on a question without notice to me. So, and if you remember in the answer, I said, I need a bit more detail or warning. So I thank the Honourable Member for that question. If you remember, it was about a march to this building from the Liquor Traders Organisation, the Western Cape Liquor Traders Organisation, on the 22nd of March 2019, and whether I have responded to their grievances. So the reply is as follows. A meeting was convened between the Department of Community Safety and the Western Cape Liquor Authority and the Western Cape Liquor Traders Organisation. In the meeting, it was agreed that the Western Cape Liquor Authority and the Department of Community Safety will meet with the Western Cape Liquor Traders Organisation, WCLTO, to work through the list of challenges that they have. In the first meeting that was held on the 12th of June, where the WCLTO raised challenges they are experiencing, which include zoning and land use departure, permits, trading days and hours, liquor licensing, harassment, fines, and fees. The topics of discussion were agreed upon, and the Western Cape Liquor Trading Organisation indicated that they would like to make inputs into the draft legislation. They were requested to compile information on each issue for submission, and a follow-up meeting was scheduled for the 3rd of July 2019. However, the WCLTO requested a 2-week extension. Following the 2-week period, then again indicated to the Western Cape Liquor Authority that they were unable to meet as a member had been shot, unfortunately. And they would make contact once that they were ready to do so. A follow-up meeting will be rescheduled once the WCLTO indicates that they are ready to proceed.
Thank you. Yes, Honourable Chief.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I remember quite well in one of the committee meetings where the Liquor Authority indicated that they were going to have a meeting with the officials of the City of Cape Town to look into specifically the issue of rezoning. And I would like to check whether the Premier is aware whether that meeting has taken place and what are the new developments in that relation. Thank you.
Premier.
Is the Premier willing to find out from the liquor trade whether that meeting has taken place between themselves and the City of Cape Town to address issues of rezoning?
Premier.
Yes, I am willing, but what I would suggest is in actual fact that this question get done in exactly the same way that the Honourable Nkondlo did, that we put those questions onto the order paper, and in actual fact not to me, because this question should actually go to the Honourable Fritz, as the Western Cape Liquor Authority falls under his ambit.
Thank you. I see there's no further follow-up. Can we move on to the next question, which is questions outstanding? I recognise Minister Mbombo.
Thank you for the question. The answer, whether the department has got a central supply database that verifies the BBBE, yes. It's done through the Provincial Treasury's database, which verifies the status. And if are there any of those, yes, from level 1 to level 8, level 1, 3,404, level 2, 448, level 3, 58, level 4, 1,033, level 5, 8, level 6, 13, level 7, 20, level 8, 32.
Thank you. Any follow-up to that question? None whatsoever. I move on to question 3. I recognise Honourable Minister Mbombo.
The total number of community health workers in the department, 3,799, which are appointed through the NPOs, who are funded by the department. Second question, whether a department has plans to integrate these workers into the complement of a department. The response is that currently there is no provision within the national policy in terms of the community health worker human resource plan, which is until they've got that and then it becomes part of the human resource plan funded, then they could be contracted. Currently, we are still having a legal binding agreements with the NPOs to provide community services to the people of the Western Cape through the community health workers.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. No follow-up questions? Sorry. You're a member. You can stand up and then we'll make sure your microphone goes on. Honourable Member Windvogel, can we just check that her microphone, why it's not working? Oh, there we go.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. We note with concern the issue that was raised by the, explained by the MEC, but I therefore want to understand from the MEC what plans are there in the department to improve working conditions of those workers. If it comes to, yeah.
I just explained that they are not the Western Cape government employees. However, we get them through the NPOs. And then within the agreements, there are agreements that are related to, in terms of the staffing issues, in terms of the reporting and so forth. So that's how things are.
Thank you. I recognise Member Philander, and then you're afterwards Member Windvogel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. If I understand the Minister correctly, she made mention of a human resource plan
So one would think then such posts need to be funded, need to be budgeted for. Will it not be now be difficult, more difficult, if there's any budget cuts? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you for the question. I think we need to...
Order. Order.
I think we need
members, can we have some order, please? There is an honourable members. Questions. You can ask your question as you want to the minister, as long as it relates to the question. So please give her the opportunity and give the minister an opportunity.
I think we need to acknowledge the role that are played by the community health workers, a part of the strengthening the primary health care. Primary health care starts from at the individual level to the families, communities, up to the district hospital level. The South African health system, although they started with a white paper on the district health systems framework, they abandoned that where community health workers were supposed to be part of that. As a result, down the line, some provinces, through projects assisted by the universities, actually I was one of the first people at the UKZN at the time, who introduced the community health workers framework at the Sisonge district. But they were never formed part, even part of the National Health Act, because if you look at the definition of the health professional, they are not being accommodated. Up to the time now, some other provinces ended up, others appointing them directly, but using the abnormal PESA. They are not necessarily on the PESA because there is no formal structures. When they introduced the Human Resource Plan for Health for 2010 draft, they've never costed it, they abandoned it, which is community health workers, they form part of that. So currently you'll find that in other provinces, they appoint them directly using abnormal PESA. Others are doing hybrid models through the NPOs and so forth. So in terms of the question, we are now that we are busy as a country with the health reforms, and then we have to introduce the Human Resource Plan for Health. It's only now that they'll be able to accommodate them. And then lastly, part of the bargaining council at the national level with the unions and the various stakeholders, including the Minister of Health around that. So it was about the current ones that are there, the provinces that are appointing them directly, they must make it a point in terms of how they to ensure, because they must be treated as part of the people who are part of the PESA. So in the Western Cape, it's not applicable because we still have got the binding agreements, legal binding agreements with the NPOs, but as part of going forward, part of the Human Resource for Health, and that now we have finalized even the pilot within the NHI district, which is community health worker, ward-based primary health care workers. They form part of number one of the item in the NHI pilot. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I just want to know from the MEC, how on earth can we as department give money to NGOs who are still exploiting our healthcare workers? How do we allow? Can't we put conditions there?
Minister?
That is just like when any service provider will have specs. So with the NGOs, we do have the specs in terms of what are the requirements, especially the minimum specs in order for us to give them money. That is number one. Number two, remember the NGOs, they are actually the owners of the NGOs, even the others, even NPOs. They are mostly women who actually, some of them have been health professionals. So as we always say that when it comes to the health, you have got a triple return where you make sure that you don't only empower the staff as health professionals, which is most of them, they are the women, but also those who are being left at the bottom, which is through community health workers. And also the other part of it is economic investment. So when we do, most of these people who are the NGOs, they cannot be able to compete in the market to be corporate, where they could part of, well, you asked the question about who are part of the people who are the service providers. They cannot. It's a big companies. At least through the NGOs, you give them a space where they could be able to compete throughout. So in terms of the exploitation, if there are any evidence of any exploitation, we need to bring it forward. But knowing that PHC, during the time of late Dr. Ivan Thoms, in relation to PPH, Progressive Primary Health Network, it was through the NGO, so you cannot dump them. And in terms of strengthening the primary health care, you need intersectional collaboration and public participation using the social fabric within the community structures. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Any follow-ups? No, we move on. Thank you very much. We move on to question 6. I recognise Minister Mayor.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Pet Moran, and also thank you to him for allowing this question to stand over from last week, as I had to address some farmers. The Honourable Member would appreciate that land reform and rural development is the competence of the National Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. It has been brought to my attention that some municipalities have entered into long-term leases of agricultural land with farmers prior to 1994. In many cases, these long-term leases are regulated by contract law. Given the history of South Africa, land reform is an important imperative to allow for redress. Land reform is a subject of both issues of legality and issues of morality. Issues of legality refers to current contracts and leases, agreements, and as the rule of law, we respect legal agreements, but there is clearly also issues of morality, and those issues refers to historical redress requirements. Honourable Pat Moran has asked me for the relevant details of municipalities that have long-term leases on agricultural land. I will inquire and request my Department of Agriculture to liaise with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform in the Western Cape to furnish me with such information as it is within their legal mandate. The Department of Rural Development and Land Reform is dysfunctional and completely inefficient, and I cannot promise to this House that I will get this information. I would ever appreciate any assistance from any member of this House that can assist me to get hold of this very important information. Like Honourable Member Moran, I need this information to constructively engage on this topic. I will, however, engage with municipalities on this issue, as it is in our interest to have redress in South Africa. Redress is a policy of my party, the Democratic Alliance. I have, however, liaised with Stellenbosch municipality also on this topic, and they agree that redress is important, and as a custodian, this municipality that I have consulted argues as follows on this topic, and I quote, "As a custodian to relatively large tracts of land, the municipality can make meaningful contribution to government's efforts to correct disparities in land use as a result of policies of previous dispensation. The municipality has a core responsibility to acquire and avail land in the first instance for its own use for purposes of developing and maintaining municipal infrastructure, promoting service delivery, and for facilitating social and economic development and spatial integration." The Honourable Member has also asked me whether I will, subject to getting information, whether I will institute a commission of inquiry. We believe in the rule of law, the Rechtsstaat, and it's absolutely clear if there's any wrongdoing, any evidence, any data, any facts, this responsibility is the responsibility of the President to institute a commission of inquiry through an application by the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform in the National Parliament. But the principal issue here is this: committed to land reform. This government is committed to redress the historical imbalances of the past, but this government has also adopted a policy of facts, evidence, and research to guide ours. So I welcome any information from the Honourable Member. It is clear from his body language that he has information, and I'm asking him to bring such information to this House, and I will certainly take it up. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I see Honourable Maron.
Speaker, thank you. Speaker, as you know, the issue of land and the skewed pattern of land ownership in this country is a hot topic, Speaker. And I've posed the question to the Honourable Minister to see whether they are serious in terms of land reform. Now, we also believe in the rule of law, Speaker. But there was clear intent just before the first democratic elections in 1994 that some municipalities, especially Stellenbosch municipality, signed long-term lease agreements with white farmers. Now, Speaker, the intent is clear, is to keep out blacks entering that specific industry. The Premier last week raised the issue of a winemaker from KZN, but they don't have the opportunity to own land. While Stellenbosch municipality owns more than 100 farms in that particular area. Speaker, also, Stellenbosch municipality responded. Speaker, I will have a follow-up question.
Member,
Responded, Speaker.
if you can get on to
Their
the question.
responsibility, thank you, Speaker.
Order, please.
Whilst they're owning more than 100 farms,
Okay.
recently they bought a piece of land for more than 40 million rand, agricultural land from a white farmer, Speaker, whilst they own this land, Speaker. So that clearly doesn't make sense. When you own land, you are buying agricultural land. And Speaker, we will really want to understand and ask the question, because we know agricultural land sold, Speaker, when it's more, the size is more than 5 hectares, the province comes into play. They also have to contribute by saying whether the sale of that piece of land can go through or not, Speaker. So, Speaker,
1 minute, members.
there's only one,
Can
Speaker,
you
there's
just
only one
finish?
question, and I'm still on the floor, and I appreciate the fact that you are giving me opportunity.
Order.
You are giving me the opportunity to speak. Yeah, you must suffer in silence, Speaker.
Honourable Marin, get on with the
Speaker,
question. Thank
the
you.
question to the Minister is, and the Minister said he will require the information, and if he received the information, whether he will propose to the National Department of Land Reform, Speaker, to expropriate some of those pieces of land and to give it to black people.
Thank you. I recognise the Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is clear that the Honourable Member speak in hypothetical terms. I require, as a Minister of this Executive, facts and evidence. I cannot reply to hypothetical examples. We're not like the other 8 provinces who just grab things from the air. I need the facts and the evidence, and I will work on the basis of the facts. But I think he's right. He's absolutely correct when he argues that land reform is a hot topic in this province and in South Africa. But he is equally correct that we must take this matter serious. And the only province on the record that has done an independent study on land reform in South Africa is this government. 2 independent studies was done. One that confirmed that all the land reform, 67%, was successful. But Honourable Deputy Speaker,
Order.
There was a second study between 2011 and 2014. That second study, independent, provided you can read.
To me, please, Minister,
Right.
to the Chair.
Okay, sorry, Chair. The second study on land reform confirmed that land reform, independent study, it will come to the committee. If you serve on the committee, I hope you don't sit on the committee, because there's a difference.
Order, members.
If you serve
Can
on
the
committee-
Minister speak to the Speaker, please?
Order,
Okay,
members.
we'll deal with you later on. Honourable Deputy Speaker,
Order, members, I can't
72% of the second study confirmed that land reform is successful in the Western Cape. This is a contrast.
Order. Honourable members, please allow the Minister to finish.
And Honourable Deputy Speaker, another study was done that confirmed that the national ANC government has a 90% failure rate on land reform. That's the reality. That's what we need to respond to. But I think, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I want to respect the point that he raised on the agenda, and I will certainly take it up with the new minister. I think she has a brighter understanding of the need, and I think I would certainly like to work with the honourable member and hope that he will also work within the honourable, together with the chair of the standing committee, that we really deal with this. But honourable Deputy Speaker, if the ANC is serious about land reform, look at their budget. When you're serious about priorities, your budget tells you whether you are serious. It's absolutely clear that the ANC ruling party, given what is in the budget, is not there. The massive corruption in land reform is the reason why this government of the ANC is messing up land reform in South Africa. But I think there's another matter. The honourable member raised the issue, they raised the issue of separation of powers. There is a legislative authority in the municipality of Stellenbosch. The ANC councillors fail in their duties in that legislative authority. Now because they fail there, Honourable Pat Moran is bringing it here. I have no problem because accountability and transparency. But if you really want to understand evidence-based practice and the rule of law and separation of powers, your members of the ANC in that legislature should table these matters. Because they fail there, you bring it here. But we are happy to deal with this particular matter.
Order.
But Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Order.
When you fail there...
Honourable members, can the Minister finish? Can the Minister finish? Can you sit down? Honourable members, can we just allow the Minister to finish and then you have a chance to respond after I've recognised you, but please can I just allow the Minister to finish? Minister, if you can...
Also, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Minister of Local Government has just advised me to give them a lecture free of charge. There's 3 branches of government and there are 3 spheres of government. And it is clear that the principle of separation of powers intellectually hasn't reached them yet. And so intellectually, that bus is on its way. It's currently there in Beaufort West, it's coming soon to Maritzburg currently. Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Order, please. Can I have some order? Minister, are you done? The Minister's done. I recognise Honourable van der Westhuizen. Member van der Westhuizen, thank you very much. He had his hand up before.
I'm rising on
sorry, if you could just, Honourable members can just sit down. Sorry, Chief Whip, I didn't see you.
I'm rising on a point of
1 minute, please. Can you please ask your own members to keep quiet?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I actually want you to rule on the Honourable Minister because he's casting aspersion on the intelligence of the member.
I'll tell you what I'll do is I will refer back to Hansard. I will listen very carefully if he has at all cast any aspersions on any honourable member in this House. Thank you very much. Chief Whip, I actually recognise Honourable Member van der Westhuizen.
Achtbare adjunct speaker.
1 minute, please.
Ek dink dis algemene kennis dat toe hierdie grond verhuur is dat die nasionale party in beheer was. Nou ek vra graag meneer die minister, dink jy nie dis ironies dat die ANC-lede nou na soveel jaar begin vra oor die optrede van hulle lede wat vroeër in die nasionale party gedien het en wat nou ANC-lede is en wat in daardie jare daardie besluite geneem het nie. Tweedens minister, jy het nou verwys daarna dat van die nasionale grondhervormingsprojekte 90% misluk het. Dis nou volgens die erkenning van minister Gugile Nkwinti. My vraag is net, glo jy dat dit...
1 minute, Mr. Honourable Member.
Yes, I served in the National Assembly.
Member van der Westhuizen, if you can just take your seat. I see you, Honourable Member.
Yes, Madam Deputy Speaker, every time I try to listen when Afrikaans is being spoken, I never really get to hear. If I can just...
Okay, 1 minute. Before anybody, can I just ask if the Sergeant at Arms could just check for us? Okay. What channel are you on?
Deputy Speaker, shall I continue in English, Deputy Speaker?
If you can, Honourable Member, just so that while we check the equipment in the fairness of everybody in this House, 1 minute, if I can just recognise the Chief Whip.
Deputy Speaker, the translation is working well on Channel 2.
Thank you. Can I just confirm? It might mean that I understand, Honourable Member. So can I ask, Honourable Member van der Westhuizen, in the interest of all the members, would you be happy to do it in English while we're sorting out the Honourable Member's translation?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may proceed.
Yes. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Minister. Minister, don't you think it's ironic that the ANC is now asking questions about their members who formerly belonged to the National Party and who then entered into these long-term agreements? And secondly, don't you think that the motivation may have been that people feared that the ANC might introduce expropriation without compensation and the nationalization of land, and that it would have been better for the farms for the last 25 years to be productive and to be giving employment to farm workers vis-a-vis the 90% failure rate of ANC government land reforms? Thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you for these follow-up questions and the comments that was made in this House. I think the Honourable Member van der Westhuizen is absolutely correct. It is, and I heard the question from the floor, who are these NP members? Here are the names who developed this policy. Pierre Uys and Mr. Martinus van Schalkwyk, Kortbroek, members of the National Party. They are members of the ANC. They were the NP members that made these policy decisions. So I think the Honourable Member is absolutely correct that it is the current ANC members that is responsible for this policy, and it is...
Order, members. I cannot hear. Honourable Member Said, sorry, Minister. Members, you're shouting so much I actually cannot hear the Minister speak. No, he's not speaking softly, Honourable Member. If I can ask, bantering is allowed, but not to the degree that you're disturbing the Speaker. Thank you very much.
Okay. Honourable Member Lily, your former Chief Whip, Pierre Uys, who's sitting there, well, Ms. Lekker is sitting. He's still on your books.
Minister,
I went to your head office in Lutulia House, and I checked your computer system. I hacked
Minister,
it,
please
and I saw his
address
name
me
there.
as the Speaker.
Pierre Uys. And I want Honourable Member Lekker to note what they do. You have a Chief Whip, do all the work, we're no longer there, then they deny you membership. They just denied membership of Pierre Uys. It's coming to you, Honourable Lekker, watch out. Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Order, members.
They're going to disown you when you're no longer here. They just done it to Pierre Uys. It's coming. It's going to come.
Honourable Minister.
We know the ANC. They stab you in the back.
Honourable Minister, Mayor, can you answer the question, please? Orders, members. Honourable members.
She's there by you. She's there by you.
Minister, you know, when I stand, then you know you're breaking all the rules. Can we have some order? Because now I'm getting very tall. So can we absolutely have no problem with bantering, but I could not hear an absolute thing. Minister, could you please answer the question posed to you? Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, I'm happy to answer the question if they give me time.
Yes, can we please afford, otherwise you're not going to get through your questions, honourable members. Minister, I recognise you.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you. I want to put it on the record of Hansard because it becomes a historical document that will be in the archives long when we are gone. Pierre Uys, Martinus van Schalkwyk were responsible for this land reform mess because they were the instigators of this current policies that we try to fix in South Africa. So it is now on the record for the Hansard. But, Honourable Deputy Speaker, on a much more serious note, I think what the Honourable Member, and I will give him the due, I want to,
Honourable Lily. Honourable
please,
Lily,
you're not
please
busy
stop
with food
distracting the
throwing now.
Minister.
This is matters of fact and matters of governance. This is not matters of poo throwing like you used to do.
Minister. Order. Member Said, I recognise you. Honourable members, please, there is a point of order. Yes.
Speaker, on a point of order, can you please urge the MEC to focus, number one? I think it will help him, it will help us, it will help the whole House, it will help the Democratic Alliance, but also to speak through you, Speaker, not to speak directly to the member.
Absolutely noted. Is that a point of order, Honourable Member? 1 minute. Honourable Member Lilly, I know you are also very good at catching the Minister's attention. If I could just ask that the two of you would focus on the question at hand. Honourable Minister, if you could focus on me and answer your question. Thank you very much.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'm so glad that the Honourable Member, Lily, he didn't throw poo on agricultural land, because that would have caused some more work for the Minister of Health. But Honourable Deputy Speaker.
1 minute, Minister, if you could sit down. Member Smith.
Oh, Speaker, the MEC is presenting himself as a very intellectual person, right? He's got all...
What's your point of order?
That's how he presents himself. Now, I would ask the MEC through you, Speaker, to please answer the question and not make provocative remarks.
Noted.
Please.
Thank you,
because the
Honourable
issue here is not about his failures. He must answer the question.
Thank you, Honourable Member Smith. Can we
You are
continue?
here for 2 months. We're looking forward to lecture you for 5 years in this House. So welcome.
Minister,
to this
can we get
House.
through? Minister, can we get through your answer? Member Smith, I think. Yes, I understand, and I have asked the Minister to answer his question, but remember, it's a prerogative of the Minister to answer the question in the way he likes. I have no rights to actually judge the information that is coming out as the Deputy Speaker, but I will try and keep him on track,
Then
Minister.
you should do it the same
Member
with
Smith.
us, ne?
Yes.
Please be consequent in what
Noted.
you say.
Thank you.
My leader of government business and the leader of the DA, he has asked me to do exactly that. I will listen to him.
Thank you,
Honourable
Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I think on a very important matter that is before us,
Order.
it is the issue of land reform, which is a serious issue. And I want to thank the Honourable Member for bringing this matter to this House, because land reform is a crucial matter if we want to save the economy. In the previous debate, there were some discussions about policy uncertainty, and this is certainly a matter that is greatly in the geopolitics in the Western Cape and in South Africa. So it is an important matter, the issues of land and land reform and the issue of leases of municipalities and what has happened before 1994. That therefore requires a detailed, in-depth analysis of land reform, but based on evidence. And so we are particularly happy to engage with this Department of Rural Development to get the facts, engage with the municipalities, either through the PCF, under the leadership of the Premier, or through the leadership of the Minister here in terms of local government through his MINMEC. I think that requires a detailed further discussion. There's no doubt about it. I have also looked at the agenda of the Stellenbosch municipality, since he has raised it now in this House. Last week, there was a special council meeting on the 14th of August, and there was an item on the agenda of the municipality, very seriously and rightfully so. The allocation of vacant municipal agricultural land to the successful land applicants. Because what is really at stake here is the issue of redress in terms of the historical issues that has happened. And so this policy tried to put in motion a policy of redress in terms of vacant municipal agricultural land, but also looking at the current leases, because these are long-term leases. And if the Honourable Member wants a policy declaration from this government, we are clear. If you have received agricultural land on a long-term lease on the conditions and the requirements that you will use it for agricultural purposes, we would like to negotiate with you to see whether we can shorten that period. If you are no longer busy on producing agricultural land for agricultural purposes, certainly there must be a conversation into that person to see to what extent we can try to exit those specific lease agreements. But we must also understand, I have looked at some of these lease agreements, many of them have no water rights. Now, if you have agricultural land that has no water rights, it means absolutely nothing. But it doesn't take away the need and the requirement for redress. That's fundamental. That must happen here in the Western Cape. But certainly, this government, on a regular basis, interact with municipalities, and we will certainly engage with them about issues of agricultural land, because I am concerned if we do put many of these agricultural land in hands of people that do not promote agriculture, we put at risk the whole issue of our food security. And given these many challenges that agriculture face, there are three major risks here, but also globally. One is water, secondly is electricity, and the third one is the issue of food security. So it is precisely because of those reasons that I think this is a serious debate. But I welcome a debate on land reform and expropriation without compensation, because this House must know this is what has happened in land reform in Venezuela. In 1999, Honorable Deputy Speaker, the government of Venezuela amended the constitution to allow for expropriation without compensation. That was 1999. In 2011, the government of Venezuela passed a law to allow for expropriation without compensation. What was the result? Politicians received agricultural land. The net effect of that was there was a food shortage. As a result of that, they had to import food. Because they had to import food, there were food riots, food trucks were hijacked, and today the economy has collapsed, and totally the inflation rate is 1 million%. I think there's an alternative to land reform. That alternative is, within the current constitutional framework, Section 25 of the Constitution, it does allow for expropriation without compensation. We believe in title deeds. We believe that people must protect the economy. We believe that you must give people title deeds. They must own the property. The ownership, what the current alternative from the EFF and the ANC is, you must lease the land. We say own the land because that title deed gives you access to capital markets. So I think there are two different philosophies about land reform. And Honorable Deputy Speaker, I would welcome a debate on land reform and the successful models of land reform. The Honorable Professor William Gumede did a significant research study, both in Morocco, he went to Algeria, he went to Nigeria, and he went to Zimbabwe, and he went to Tanzania. All land reform models were based on the model of Zimbabwe and Venezuela. It has failed miserably. And therefore, this is a serious conversation. One of the structural reform issues that we need to address in South Africa is to provide certainty and clarity and predictability. One of the requirements for good governance is predictability. And we believe the model that we have implemented in the Western Cape is the most successful model, but we engage with all the political parties to see that we take South Africa forward on the basis of property rights, on the basis of the free market economy, and on the basis of constitutionalism. If that's the agreement of Honourable Member Pat Maran, I'm inviting him for a cup of tea to my office.
Thank you, Honourable Member van der Westhuizen. Thank you, Minister.
Dankie, adjunct speaker, deur u aan die minister van Landbou. Een van agbare Maran se vrae het gehandel oor
Speaker on a point of on a point of order.
Sit down, Honourable Member.
Sit down. Speaker, my hand was up long before the Honourable's hand. And I'm not sure why you ignore.
No, I saw all three of your hands and I've recognized all
Speaker,
three of you can speak.
whilst the Honourable was on the floor posing his question to the Honourable, my hand was up at that point already.
All right, member, I will give you the time straight after this member now, because there's
It's
no use
unfair,
now
Speaker.
blacking. Yes, I
No, it's
promise you.
unfair. Do you agree it's unfair from your side?
I'm not quite sure who got up first or whose name I got, sir, but I saw his name, I saw him, and I saw you, and I recognize that you will definitely be speaking.
Speaker, I'm saying to you that I hear what you're saying. I'm saying to you, while he was on the floor posting a question to the MEC, my hand was already up. So it's impossible for the Honourable to speak and at the very same time raise his hand for another question.
Okay,
Speaker,
member,
it's impossible.
I apologize if that's the point, but I will certainly give another opportunity
Will you
to
allow me then
address
to
it.
speak?
I will allow you to speak after the member.
You then agree it's unfair?
Yes, I agree that you will speak straight after the member. I'm not agreeing it's unfair. It might be a mistaken, Honourable Member. Marin, I do recognise you. Thank you, Honourable Member.
Young Speaker, miskien maak ek dit nou sommer vir agbare Maran maklik. Een van sy vrae aan die minister van Landbou was: hoe is dit denkbaar dat 'n munisipaliteit nog 'n plaas, in hierdie geval verwys hy na die plaas Watergang, buitekant Stellenbosch aankoop terwyl die munisipaliteit reeds oor aansienlike plaasgrond beskik? Sal die minister van Landbou dalk vir agbare Maran net verduidelik waarom sekere stukke landbougrond meer geskik is vir dorpsuitbreiding as ander? Want duidelik is dit nie baie duidelik in agbare Maran se gedagtes nie. Dankie.
Baie dankie, agbare lid. No, I see the minister.
On a point of order, Speaker.
1 minute, Minister. Yeah, are we having the same problem with your... Is it your translation, Honourable Member?
Look, Madam Speaker, let me just explain this thing clearly. I don't have a problem with any member in the House speaking any language.
Sure.
You know, so, but I would like to hear what is being said. Now, every time, because every time when Afrikaans is spoken, I go to Xhosa, I don't go to English. I don't have to listen English. I can speak, I can listen my own language.
Sure.
There is never an interpretation, and English, and Xhosa is in Channel 6.
Okay.
And it's now, it's on and off, it's on and off.
All
So
right.
I would really like that to be corrected. As I said, I don't have any problem. Anybody can speak a language of his or her choice, but I would like to also listen in the language of my choice.
Absolutely, you have a point, and I've asked the Sergeant-in-Arms to check that out and make sure that you're able to hear a translation. Thank you very much. Please, Honourable Minister, if you can continue with the answer.
Deputy Speaker, thank you for that question. I think, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the issue of the need for housing is always existing. My job, I'm not the MEC for Human Settlements. There's the Honourable Member. But my primary job is to protect agricultural land. But also, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I understand the geographical landscape of the Western Cape. I understand that the Western Cape is 129,000 square kilometres in size, 10% of the 1.3 million square kilometres in South Africa. And I understand that 45% of all the exports of agriculture in South Africa comes from the Western Cape. I also understand that 26% of commercial agriculture is here based in the Western Cape. I also understand that we have 16,000 farmers here in the Western Cape. I also understand that agriculture generates 41 billion rand in total revenue every year. So I understand the significance of agriculture, and therefore it is important for me and my colleagues to protect the agricultural economy of the Western Cape. It contributes 10% of the GDP. But also, Honourable Deputy Speaker, from time to time, there are requirements to take some agricultural land and for some other particular needs of society, and it is therefore a process of rezoning. It is a process of an environmental impact assessment. It is a lot of independent assessments, and the Department of Agriculture, both the Western Cape Department of Agriculture and the National Department of Agriculture, must comment on any application of municipalities when they, for example, want to make use of agricultural land for whatever other purpose it is. And so it is possible and feasible that sometimes land are not anymore viable for agricultural purposes, and hence municipalities take decisions on their particular rational choices. But if the honourable member have any specific land in question, I'm happy to deal with the detail, and I'm also happy to engage with the relevant municipality and the mayor should I become aware of any certain needs that may require some interventions from the executive.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, I recognise you, Honourable Maron.
Speaker, thanks. The MEC have not answered or explained why that particular farm and not the other one. Now, Speaker, the answer is that specific piece of land was invaded not so long ago. That specific piece of land that was sold for more than 40 million rand. And the answer why that piece of land, because the municipality wanted to take that burden from that owner. That was the reason, the only reason, was to take that burden from that particular owner, because it was invaded.
Question, Honourable Member.
So, then Speaker, the Honourable van der Westhuizen then blamed the ANC.
Honourable Member, you need to ask the question.
I'm going to ask.
Okay,
I'm
if
gonna
you can
ask
move
Speaker.
as quickly as
Blamed.
that.
And Speaker, and I hope that, and the Honourable is a very senior politician. He hails from Stellenbosch, a councillor
point
from
of
that
order.
particular area, and I hope he was not part of that decision.
Take your seat, Honourable Member.
And I hope he was not part of that
Honourable
decision.
Member, take your seat. Honourable Member, take your seat.
Speaker,
I recognise the Chief Whip. Honourable Member, just take your seat. There's a point of order. Yes, Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I have two difficulties. The first is that these are questions to the executive, not questions to members of the legislature. So first, I think that is out of order. And secondly, it is a question to the member of the executive, not a statement. So if you could please assist the honourable member.
Thanks. Honourable Member Maron, that is absolutely correct.
Thanks, Speaker.
I'm really asking that the next sentence is a question.
yes, Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister just check for us, Speaker,
I
whether
hear
the Honourable,
I hear you.
whether the Honourable van der Westhuizen was part of the council that took a decision to sign law? It's a question.
1 minute. Ask the
The
question.
question is posed to the Minister. Whether he will check whether the Honourable was part of that particular council that took a decision to sign long-term lease agreements with white farmers. Speaker.
Thank you very much.
Then,
can I-
Speaker, no, I'm not finished.
Oh, you're
Speaker,
on your second question.
Speaker, to the...
Order, please, members.
Let me finish.
Order, please, members.
Speaker, let
I'm
me
listening.
finish. Speaker, and I'm glad that the Honourable Minister have said that he will follow up with the Stellenbosch municipality.
Question.
My question is, Speaker, when you have established the facts, and the facts will show that long-term lease agreements were signed just before 1994, to be specific,
Question,
in January,
member.
March, whether he will propose to the national government, whether, look, you are the
Question,
government
member.
of the day. Leave
Member,
here
can
and
you
you're
speak
not
to
there.
me and not get distracted? Speak to me directly.
Whether the minister will propose to the national minister in terms of land reform, if they are serious, in terms of land.
Honourable order, members. Can I finish? Can the member finish his question?
Speaker, you are the government.
Can you please speak to
They
me,
also-
honourable member?
the-
Focus on
Yes,
me.
Speaker. Whether the minister will propose to the national minister to contribute to the issue of land reform.
One member. Can you finish, honourable member? I'm listening.
Yes, I'm busy asking my question, Speaker.
Yes.
Don't be in a hurry. I know it's painful.
You need
Speaker.
to focus on me.
I know it's painful when we speak
Honourable,
about...
honourable member, you really are stretching this out. If you can
Speaker,
get to your point.
when the minister is willing, when he has established the facts, and the facts will prove that long-term lease agreements were signed just before 1994 to keep out blacks, whether he will propose to the national minister when they start with expropriation without compensation, because it's a given. You can do whatever you want on that side. It
Thank
will
you,
happen.
member.
So that
Thank
we
you,
will
member.
start in Stellenbosch.
Thank you, honourable member.
Speaker.
Your question has been asked. I'm going to ask that the minister responds.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I think what is at stake here is that the Honourable Member Pat Maran has given an opinion. And in terms of I'm thankful for the advice from my Chief Whip in this regard. But the rules of Parliament are clear. I'm going to answer the question. I'm going to answer factually. But the Honourable Member...
Members, order, please.
Honourable Member Maran must understand. Honourable Member
Honourable
Maran
Lily.
must also understand that in terms of the rules of this House, you can ask 3 types of questions. Firstly, you can ask a question of concept, then we give you clarity. Secondly, you can ask a question of fact, Mr. Lilly, then we give you the data. Thirdly, Honourable Member Lilly, since this is your first time in this House.
Minister, speak to me.
Sorry, to the Honourable Member Lilly.
Honourable members, please.
The third type of questions, I'm sorry that your Chief Whip didn't do some introduction. So the third type of questions that you can ask in this House is what we call questions of values. And I think
Order.
Honourable Member
Order,
Pat Maran,
members.
he has raised some questions of value, and I will certainly take some of those matters up. But also, the Honourable Member must understand that the rules of this House that we are governed, and thank you, Chief Whip, for educating your members, that when you are a member of the House, you must ask questions as the legislative authority to the executive authority. But what we have seen now is the member of the legislative authority is asking questions to a member of the legislative authority.
Speaker on a point of order.
Thank you, Minister.
Speaker on a point of order.
Can you finish off? That is the end of questions. There is no more further up, Honourable Marin.
Speaker.
Also, Honourable Deputy
Speaker on a point of order.
I want to conclude.
Speaker on a point of order.
Minister, can you sit down for a second?
Speaker, the member is...
Honourable Marin, if he's misleading the House, then you must bring out a substantive motion. Can I just ask, we're ending at questions now. We've come to the end of our 60 minutes. I need the Minister to finish off, and you must please bring a substantive motion if he's misleading the House.
But the Minister must not mislead the House Speaker. I've never posted the question to that particular...
Thank you.
Honourable.
Honourable Member, can
I've
you
posted
sit
the
down?
question to the Minister whether he is willing to investigate whether that
Honourable
particular
Member
member was part of the
Marin.
council that took a decision. That was my question.
Honourable Member Marin, can I request from you that when I speak to you, you please stop speaking. Otherwise, it will be total chaos in the House. Yourself and Honourable Lily seem to play this cross cricket game here. I know you're enjoying it, but it's quite difficult for me to manage at all times. Can I just ask now, is the Minister finished on his last sentence? Because we are now finished with questions. We are done. Thank you, members. This is the end of questions for oral reply. Outstanding replies will be printed in the Hansard. We are now moving over to statements by members. I recognise the DA.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Achtbare Deputy Speaker, ek hou graag voor die woorde van 'n graad 4 digter vanuit Beaufort Wes, Beverly Soldaat, wat 'n leerder is aan die laerskool John D. Crawford en sy vat jeugdag so op. 'n Man verstaan nie altyd mooi die vas oor jeugdag. Dit is dan glad 'n publieke vakansiedag. Of nee, wag, gedurende apartheid het baie dinge verkeerd gegaan. Apartheid? Okay, groot woord, né? Vir jou en vir my eintlik 'n lelike woord. Afskuwelik, veragtelik, afstootlik en bly so oneindig bly is ek dat dit is verby. Maar hoe is hierdie monster bestry wat 'n nasie so bitter eindloos kan laat lei? Die jeug het 'n groot aandeel gehad om die arrogante apartheid te laat pak. Die jeug het gevoel genoeg is genoeg. Hulle was absoluut moeg vir hierdie apartheid wat ons menswees so verkrag het en dan skaamteloos gelag het. Terwyl ons volk van ellende krepeer, het dit harteloos op ons geteer. En in 1976 het die jeug verras toe hulle in opstand kom teen die regeringsmag. Dapper, vreesloos gewapen, met net 'n sterk hart en 'n droom om eendag in 'n demokratiese Suid-Afrika te woon. 'n Jong seun het met sy lewe geboet. Hector Peterson het vir ewig gegroet, maar dank die Here, dit was nie in vain. Die aarde is met bloed bevlek, baie moes die offer bring. Deur ander se bloed is ek en jy bevry. Ons salute Nelson Mandela, Hector Peterson, die res en die jeug. Ons het gewaag, ons het beklei, ons het geslaag, ons is bevry. Viva die jeug, viva. Honourable Speaker, I want to place this on record today because this primary school learner from Beaufort West crafted this poem and delivered it on Monday at the Mimosa Library. I want this house to take note of the talent in Beaufort West. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize the ANC. If I can just ask my table staff to give me a list of exactly who is speaking in these statements. I've only got the party, the people. All right, the ANC, I recognize you, Honourable Member Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Western Cape DA continues to lose its grip on a daily basis on its local governments in the province. Yesterday, we saw how the DA's sweetheart Cape Town Transport Executive Director, Melissa Whitehead, spectacularly jumped ship. She was made the scapegoat for the corruptive My City contracts and manipulative malfeasance. She had to fight to protect her professional integrity, but could no longer outrun the bad intent of the bullying DA to slaughter her. After a disciplinary hearing on the import of bus chassis, she decided to throw in the towel, but she continues to sue the DA Deputy Mayor Ian Nielsen for defamation. In other municipalities, we saw how DA councils continue to collapse. We got confirmation this morning that Matsikama Ward Councillor Ward 4 from Vredendal resigned from the bullying DA as a ward councillor, which means a by-election is still looming. We also heard this week that the bullying DA forced the Knysna mayor, Mark Willems's wife, to leave the party of the Helens, Suzmans, and the Zillas. This morning, the newspaper tells us the bullying DA forced its Oudtshoorn mayor, Colin Sylvester, to go on special leave after the DA wanted him to resign from the position and he refused. And there are more coming. We've warned you. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Order, members. I see that the EFF is not here. I move over to the DA. I see Member Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, there are members on these benches who once served as members of mayoral committees in the city of Cape Town and who took numerous decisions while holding these offices. Following his untimely exit from the city of Cape Town, it seems the honourable member has come to the Western Cape Provincial Parliament not with a desire to serve the people, but with a political vendetta. This is evident in the outrage he manufactures by misconstruing information and twisting facts to suit his own personal political narrative. We know that following his departure from the city, the honourable member criticized the Salt River Housing Project delay when it was he himself who allegedly sent the contract back to the mayoral committee to be properly validated before its implementation. We know that the honourable Aaron criticizes the provincial
One minute, member. If you could just take your seat. Honourable Member Mbembe, sorry, I saw you stand first before I saw Honourable Member Heron.
On the
If
point
you
of
could
order,
first hear
Speaker,
you.
I think we must try and be fair in the House. I remember in the previous week, in the previous sitting, there was issues that were raised about the honourable member in the House. And the member stood up and said that let's not get personal about issues. So now, if we can still, are we still going to be consistent with that rule, or have we abandoned that rule completely?
Okay. Honourable Heron, did you also want to raise a point of order?
Yes, Deputy Speaker. I don't have the rules in front of me, unfortunately, but there is a rule that allows me to clarify a misstatement by another member. And it is not true that I sent Salt River Market project back. So the honourable member is misleading this House and is lying.
Thank you. Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The rule.
1 minute.
The rule is for executive members, and also explanation is only for a member who is speaking, a member's speech who's been misquoted. So I don't think that rule is applicable in this case.
That's correct. Honourable Member Heron, I see you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm sorry that I didn't bring my rules with me, but I cannot believe that the House allows someone to say something that's not true and doesn't allow the member who's been referred to stand up and object.
Okay. If I can refer to Rule 65, which is an explanation during debate, is allowed with prior consent of the presiding officer, and that's in its short form. So with prior consent, you can explain matters on a personal nature, but it is in a debate. Can I refer that Member Heron that you take this up with the Rules Committee? Can I ask that Member Maseko continue with her statement?
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
1 minute, member. I can't rule on the information that she is putting out there, but I certainly will see that if it's breaking any rules, I will refer back to Hansard, honourable member. If you address me, you need to stand up, but I need to move on.
I was saying,
yes,
Deputy Speaker, there was a request, and maybe to a certain extent, a precedent established that if we are going to carry on and create a precedent of raising issues about personal issues of honourable members here, and even it was specifically mentioned by Honourable Mackenzie that we are here with each other for 5 years. We must actually then allow that. If that's going to be allowed, it's fine. I just want to find out whether does the House allows that we raise issues that are affecting members on personal, that are of personal in nature. Then we know that's the rule.
okay. So that refers, thank you, Honourable Member Mbimbi, that refers to Rule 59, and it reads that we cannot bring any improper or unethical conduct on part of a member to the House. You need to bring a substantive motion, and so I will remind that the Honourable Member remembers that. Thank you. Can we proceed?
Very much. Deputy Speaker, like I mentioned that there is an allegation that happened. So I'm going to continue with this statement and say that again. We know that following this member's departure from the city, this honourable member criticized the Salt River Housing Project delay when it was he himself who allegedly sent the contract back to the mayoral committee to be properly validated before its implementation. We know that this allegation about this member criticizes the Provincial Department of Human Settlements for buying land for emergency housing at the market value, when it was he himself who allegedly refused to buy any land for emergency housing at all.
Take your seat, Honourable Member. There's a point of order. Honourable Member, there's a point of order. Member Teko.
No, thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Honourable Member Smith, your own members standing up? Yes. Honourable Member Lilly, your own members on a point of order?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think, again, I rise on Rule 59.
Yes.
As we have ruled earlier.
Yes.
That the member cannot improper conduct to the member. He must do so in a substantive motion.
Okay, but can I remind...
But
I
because
hear you.
the member speaker, and we want to appeal for consistency,
yes,
continues to say allegations in whatever she's raising. And when there were allegations of a member stealing electricity, we're told that we can't raise those things, but we must raise them in a substantive motion.
Honourable members, I will be reading out the ruling that that happened a few weeks ago, or a few sittings ago. So it will relate to something like this, but the member has clearly used the word allegations. I do not want to shut down total freedom of speech in this House. She has used the word allegations. As long as she does that, she does not infringe on Rule 59. I will make a ruling at the end of this sitting, and that I ask that you please be attentive when I do read that ruling out. I'd like the member to finish his statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, while there are other members in the legislature that have made commitment to serving the people of Western Cape, it is evident that there are other honorable members who has made a commitment to save their own agenda, that of his embittered parties.
Honorable Lily.
Indeed, it is very hard to take such a legislator seriously when his statements or her statements are based on nothing more than political claptrap. But we know exactly why there are other members here. The only problem is sooner or later their twisted facts will only twist their reputation further, and their relevance in this legislature will only continue to dwindle.
Honourable Member, I see the Honourable Heron from Good.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Let me make a statement about the Salt River Market Project. The Salt River Market Project is an affordable housing project that has been on the city's housing horizon since about 2011, when I was elected ward councillor for Ward 57 in Cape Town. That project never went to the MACO, or was never sent back to MACO. It was sent back by the DA caucus, who were opposed to affordable housing in the Salt River inner city area, and they concocted reasons like Deputy Speaker, may I
Order,
not
members.
speak? The deputy.
1 minute, Member Heron. Members, can you submit? Honourable members, everybody wants to be heard. Can you afford this member from Good Party to please finish his statement? Otherwise, we're going to be at till 10 o'clock tonight. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, the Salt River Market Project was referred back by the DA caucus because the DA caucus did not support affordable housing in the inner city. The honourable member who, the DA that is currently in this House, Deputy Speaker, is confused between two different Salt River projects. The Salt River Market Project is...
Minister. Thank you.
The Minister must go and pay his electricity bill. Deputy Speaker, the Salt River Market Project was never referred back by me to the mayoral committee, and in fact was eventually approved by the council in December following my resignation. I resigned because the DA caucus refused to implement a project that would address affordable housing in the inner city. But Deputy Speaker, last week the City of Cape Town cancelled 5...
Order, members. Members. Honourable Lily. Honourable Lily. Honourable Lily. Honourable Lily. Can you rise, please? Okay. You're a consistent infringement of the rules. So now, you know, when I stand up, it really does get serious. I see that the Chief Whip of the Opposition has risen on a point of order. Please, I can hear you very clearly when you're shouting across the House. Please, may I ask for some more respect for our fellow members, as contentious as the issues raised. Let's have some order. I see you, Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'm actually rising on a point of order. As a member, Heron is on the podium speaking. MEC Simas goes on to say, what a lie. And I would like you to rule on whether that language usage is allowed and permissible in the House. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member Lecker. I will refer to Hansard. I did not hear it, and I will revert back on that ruling. I recognise the Honourable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd really like to complete the statement, so I'm going to make it clear. The Salt River Market Project was a project on the housing plan from at least 2011. It was a mixed income, mixed use project for the redevelopment of the old Salt River Market. It was referred back by the DA caucus in October 2018, following objections by the new ward councillor who replaced me in 2016 local government elections. And the reasons for referring it back were spurious. And on that basis, I resigned from the DA because they are not committed to spatial integration, despite what it says in their manifesto. There is confusion, though, because the Mayor of Cape Town currently is saying that no housing projects have been cancelled, yet the City of Cape Town cancelled 5 additional affordable housing projects in the Salt River market, in the Salt River area. And finally, my department did refuse to buy the piece of land that was purchased by the provincial government through the HDA because the price was more than 3 times the market value. The city already owned land on the corner of Potsdam and Blauberg Road and acquired at Annandale 72 hectares of land across the N7. The land was not needed unless the DA needed it for party political funding.
Thank you, Member. I now see the ACDP.
Deputy Speaker, the ACDP is asking the DA Western Cape government to reject the proposed implementation of comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, by the Department of Basic Education in our Western Cape schools. Speaker, the ACDP is against the radical sexualization of school children. We are opposed to the introduction of CSE. Speaker, the 19th of August 2019, the ACDP handed over a petition to the Department of Basic Education in Pretoria to scrap and remove CSE from our curriculum. They are using the disturbing rate of the increase in teenage pregnancies to introduce the program that will teach our grade 4 to 12 children about oral anal sex and masturbation. What? The teaching of sexual education is the primary responsibility of the parent. Sex education at school should be taught at the appropriate age with the involvement of the parent. We are all aware, and we are aware of CSE is based on one of the core philosophers, Dr. Alfred Kingsley, namely, where he said children are naturally sexual from birth, therefore any restrictions on their sexual expression or sexual activity violates their sexual rights. And secondly, he said, to have good health, children and adults alike should be having regular sexual experiences, either alone or through masturbation, or with persons of either gender. The ACDP is asking the DA government to reject the CSE completely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize the ANC. Honourable Member Sayed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Western Cape Education Department, under the MEC for Education, Honourable Debbie Schaefer, has thus far shown an uncaring attitude towards school safety and the safety of our vulnerable learners in particular. How does the MEC and the department expect children to learn if they cannot feel safe in their schools? This inertia was proven by Honourable MEC in this House last week, Deputy Speaker, when she clearly stated that no broken fence at about 66 schools in desperate need of repair will be fixed as people break them again, as if taxpayers' money is not meant for school safety. Daily we put the lives of our children in the hands of this MEC and her team. But our children, well, maybe not her children, are left at the mercy of criminals and gangsters who invade schools where fences are broken and not repaired in our communities. Too regularly we hear of horrific attacks on children. Children are bullied and abused by people who do not belong to the school's premises, like the teenager in Klutzville that was stabbed at Stellenbosch just this past week. We must ask this MEC, how many children will have to die in our schools or fall victim to the gangs coming onto our school premises before she or her department will act? There is no time to quibble over safer schools, Deputy Speaker. There is taxpayers' money and funds allocated to safeguard our schools, as her own officials told us in the Standing Committee on Tuesday. The MEC must stop shifting the blame and do her job by taking responsibility for our school children. She must shape up or do the honourable thing and resign, or our Honourable Premier must assist us in taking action. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognise the DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital recorded 2,582 sexual assaults on children under 13 years across the province last year. Nearly 37,000 children in the province have been removed from their homes which are deemed dangerous, with a prevalence of traumatic events including negligence, abuse and rape. Sexual violence is most greatly suffered by girls and young women across South Africa, and this does not discriminate against colour, societal status or background. This is why we all need to continuously do whatever we can in order to prevent sexual assault, abuse and violence in our communities. Every small deed and opportunity should be used to keep the dangers that women face in the spotlight as we advocate for safer spaces. 3 years ago, 16-year-old Franziska Blochliger was brutally attacked, raped and murdered while out for a run in what was considered a relatively safe space frequented by many families and residents from across the city. In an effort to keep her memory alive, to showcase community support against the atrocities and the dangers women face every day, the community started tying ribbons to the entry gate of the park, affectionately dubbed Ribbon Gate. Last week, during Women's Month, female wardens from Polesmore Prison were barred by Sandparks from placing ribbons on the gate, effectively barring the community from showing their respects and to continue their advocacy. I'm proud of every member of our community who has joined our call to Sandparks to allow continued activism for safer spaces, especially for women, and in solidarity with the thousands of women who face assault, abuse, and violence daily. Actions against violence in our communities can never be silenced or ignored.
Thank you. I see that the Freedom Front Plus is not here. I recognize Al Jamal. I see that, and then I recognize the DA.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, recently a self-confessed gangster gave chilling evidence in the Western Cape High Court, and he made a claim that the gang that he belongs to has approximately 10,000 members. Research has further showed that the largest known gang in the Western Cape has a membership of approximately 50,000 people. Speaker, it will never be okay for gangs to be the reason why our schools are closing. It can never be okay if a bullet flies through the window of a clinic. So that can never be okay. And if I look back to 1998, and a report on the Western Cape Police Service indicated that there was an understaffing of 35% based on the ideal personnel strength. What that means is that the personnel shortage at the time meant that the police service will only be able to answer half of the total demand of its service. That's approximately 20 years ago. Currently, we now have 20,000, just over 20,000 SAPS members in the Western Cape. Hence, it can never be that we are 20 years behind gangsters, that we are 20 years behind the fact that we have an understaff, we have an under-resourcing in SAPS, and that can never be okay, that they are approximately 20 years ahead of us. What that means is, as I was listening, and to go off this note I have, half an hour ago, as we were sitting here, a 1-year-old child was raped in Mitchell's Plain. So that can never be okay. And with that, the Western Cape government is trying everything in its power to see how can we come together and across all spheres of government in order to make this province safer. But what we have received in return was that there has been minimal support regarding the dire state of under-resourcing here in the Western Cape from SAPS. What we've also seen is that various ministers, they showed little to no interest in the policing needs within the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That comes to the end of statements. Is there a minister who wishes to respond as contemplated in Standing Rule 145.6? I recognize Minister Schaefer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to respond first of all to Honourable Christians. I have asked my department for more details of the exact specifics of the sexual education curriculum for next year. I'm still waiting for that, and we will have another look at it. But we do need to acknowledge that whether we like it or not, there are children as young as primary school 10 or below who are engaging in sexual activity. So we have to be realistic about it, and whether we are happier with it or not, unfortunately, that is what we have to deal with. But I am going to look into it a little bit more, and then we'll get back to this House. Honourable Syed, last week you asked me a question. You were so busy trying to create hysteria that you didn't bother to even listen to the answer. You then ran to the media and said that I said there were 66 schools that we would not replace the fences of. That is not what I said. I asked the question, who broke the fence in the first place? Yes, there is a Hansard. Thank goodness for that.
Honourable Member Said.
Fortunately for that, there is a Hansard. What I said is, we didn't break the fences, but I said, notwithstanding that, we have identified 66 schools that desperately need fencing and that we will prioritise in the next few years. That is what I said. So perhaps if one would bother to listen to the answers instead of making a noise, then you would actually get the correct facts. Unfortunately, the newspaper can't seem to get their facts straight either, because according to the Argus today, my spokesperson apparently appeared before the standing committee. So that's what the ANC always does. As soon as they get caught out in a lie, they try and deflect it by saying we blame everybody else.
Order, members.
I would fix the fences if the ANC stopped cutting our budget every month, every year. If they stop cutting the infrastructure budget like they're doing again this year. So we're fixing the fences.
Honourable Minister to speak to me. Members, this can't be a conversation across the House. I'm listening to the Minister.
So we are trying to fix the fences, but if we had more money, that wasn't stolen and wasted by the ANC national government, we would have been able to do it a lot sooner. But we will not keep on replacing equipment that is lost, stolen and vandalised, and we need communities to assist us. As far as Honourable Heron is concerned, last week the land in question was apparently twice the value. This week it's 3 times the value. So maybe if we ask the same question next week, it'll be 4 times the value. So
maybe we need to be speaking about the same land.
Honourable Member, just sit down. If you could just take your seat, Minister.
I think it's here.
Member Heron, you can't push the microphone and just speak.
Deputy Speaker, the DA is completely confused about land, and they are misleading this House. There is different parcels of land, and if the DA can just speak about one piece of land at a time, that would be very useful.
Honourable Heron, members, we can't. If you rise, you need to rise on a point of order. But please, this is the Minister's prerogative for 5 minutes that she can actually address this House. I understand, but that is not for me to judge. I would like to consider, please can I ask some order in the House? Please do not put your microphone on and speak without asking for that permission. I recognise the Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I think now we have a little bit better idea why the Honourable Heron resigned, so-called, from the City of Cape Town. But what I do think he should maybe explain to this House is what exactly was going on with Minister Whitehead in that Chinese bus contract, and stop interfering and interjecting in this House whenever we put on facts on the table that he doesn't like.
Can you take a seat, Minister? Thank you, Honourable Heron.
Through you, Deputy Speaker, the Minister asked me to explain some stuff, so I'm happy to do so if you allow me to do so.
No, we can't do that here. Thank you very much. I see that the Minister has finished speaking. Is that correct, Minister Schaefer? You done? Are you completed? Thank you very much. That concludes the members' statements. Members, we move over to notices of motion in terms of Rule 147. Are there any motions where notice is given? Are there any motions when I see the Honourable Member Said?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that the House notes and discusses the dilapidated state of our school infrastructure and infrastructure backlog in the province. Notes further that while many schools have been closed down in the past due to poor infrastructure, many more schools are dilapidated due to poor maintenance, and calls for a full investigation into the state of school infrastructure, the demand for school infrastructure and maintenance plans of the department. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Notice taken. Honourable Member, I see you.
Deputy Speaker, I move that this House debates the progress with the construction related to the raising of the Clanwilliam Dam wall, the challenges and delays experienced to date, and the benefits that the increased water storage capacity may hold for agriculture, particularly emerging farmers in the lower Olifants River area. Thank you.
Notice taken. Any other motions with notice? Wow. Thank you. That concludes the notices of motion. Am I correct? I'm moving over to motions. Notices with motion, Member Marin? Motions with notice, you may rise. Please rise.
Speaker, thanks. Speaker, motion with notice that the House debate the ways to transform the agricultural economy within the Western Cape.
Notice taken. Any other motions with notice? I see Honourable Member Smith. Honourable Member Marin, please don't engage. There we go. Okay, I see your colleague behind the scenes.
Speaker, motion with notice that the House debates the high cost of water and electricity in the province.
Notice taken. Any other motions and notices of motion? No, we are now moving over to motions without notice. Am I correct? I first saw Honourable Member Philander, and then I see Honourable Member Sayed, and then I see Honourable Member Tegel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House condemns the alleged unfair dismissal of 3 doctors linked to the Tygerberg Hospital, studying to become professional anaesthetists. We are happy to note a review by Minister Mbombo of the disciplinary processes and outcomes to ensure the alleged crime equates to the punishment, and remain therefore full confidence within the review process which the Minister will conduct. Further notes that any loss of healthcare professionals for whatever reasons in the broader context of the dire need to strengthen health services is a major concern. Further moves, Deputy Speaker, that we should note that personnel matters should not be politicized. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is no objection to the motion. Is there any objections to the motion? No? Noted. Thank you. Sorry, I remember I said members say it first, did I? And then I said over to you. I recognize
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes with concern that parents of learners attending Diaz Primary School in Mossel Bay are not happy with the Department of Education's plan for a replacement school, which should not be big enough to accommodate grade R learners, as plans for 2 classes were not approved, and may also lead to the loss of jobs by 2 teachers. Notes further concerns that grade R learners will have to be moved to other schools as they no longer have a place at the school. Condemns the department's inconsiderate approach and calls for a further investigation into the matter. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved? There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Member, you are next.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move a motion without notice that the House notes with great sadness the killing of a young and upcoming designer and businessman from Khayelitsha, Thulani Mbiko, who was shot dead on August 15, 2019. Notes further that his murderers called him to Greenpoint in Khayelitsha, pretending to be clients that wanted to buy his clothing. Calls on the police to speed up investigations to bring perpetrators to book, and conveys sincerest condolences to his family and friends. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Okay. Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Member Mitchell.
Dankie, achtbare adjunct speaker. Namens die Democratische Alliansie plaas ek die motie sonder kennisgewing dat die huis kennis neem dat Roelof Erasmus van Staden, direkteur elektrotechnische dienste te Beaufort West Municipaliteit, op 30 September 2019 aftree, hulde bring aan sy meer as 24 jaar diens aan Beaufort West en sy mense, verder kennis neem dat onder Roelof se leierskap die departement uitstaande diens lewer in Beaufort West, bedank vir sy harde werk en sy respek vir ander wat vir almal uitstaan as kernwaardes vir Roelof, wat hy daagliks uitleef en waarmee hy sy personeel met kundigheid gelei het en ook nie geskroom het om self in te spring en om herstelwerk te doen soos verlang nie, en sterkte toewens met sy aftrede en om alles van die beste toewens met sy wetvlug duif stokperdjie en meer tyd saam met sy vrou Elsabie en 2 kinders. Ek stel so voor.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections. Agreed to. I saw Member Windvogel before everyone else. You did have your hand up earlier. You can step up just
Thank
now.
you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that 20 August 2019 marked the 36th anniversary of the formation of the United Democratic Front. Notes further that it was launched in Mitchell's Plain on the same day in which the apartheid government planned to introduce the racist legislation for tricameral parliamentary, pays tribute to the UDF on its 36th anniversary and salute its former members and leaders like Dr. Ellen Busak, Mama Albertina Sisulu, and Archie Kumete for their uncompromising opposition to the apartheid regime and all its policies, and calls on all South Africans, especially young people, to keep the legacy of the UDF. I thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. I'm going to move across like this, members. It's easier. I'll move over to the DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House notes that the winemaking industry has traditionally been a male-dominated environment, and B, therefore congratulates Ms. Kelly Marie Jacobs, a former employee of the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, on a recent appointment as the white wine winemaker of Zonnebloem, a brand in the Distel Group, that we trust that the appointment will serve as an inspiration to other women to follow in her footsteps, and D, wish her well in her future career. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. I see the ANC. Yes, the quicker one stands up. Honourable Member Smith.
Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes with concern the suspended City of Cape Town Transport Director, Melissa Whitehead, who was found guilty in a disciplinary hearing.
I'm hearing you.
Notes further that Bauman-Gilfillan investigation fingered her as one of the enablers of corruption in the city, which related to the appointment of a UK consultant to set up Transport Authority. Acknowledges that while Whitehead may have resigned, there remains a need for further investigation into deep-rooted corruption in the City of Cape Town, and calls for the investigation as soon as possible.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I move across to the other side and I'll move back to you. Honourable Member.
Motion without notice that this House commenced the newly established Strand Community Safety Forum, which has just appointed its members. The forum aims to address civil unrest through mediation to improve the safety of N2 commuters and the surrounding communities. That the House further recognizes the collaborative efforts of all the Neighbourhood Watch, CPF, private security, ratepayers associations, and other safety stakeholders involved in its establishment. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. ANC, there you go.
Motion without notice, Deputy Speaker, that the House note that this week marked a year since the Commission of Inquiry into the allegation of state capture commenced its work. Note further that the Commission is one of the ways in which the ANC government show its resolve to root out corruption and bring about a new dawn. Commend the work that has been done thus far and call for action to be taken on some of the serious cases that have been raised in the Commission.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. Over to the side of the bench. Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hereby move without notice that this House welcomes Rockland Civic Centre as a provincial heritage site as declared by Heritage Western Cape on the 20th of August 2019. Further notes the important role that the UDF played as an anti-apartheid organization in the promotion of democracy. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. Over to you, Member Merritt.
Speaker, motion without notice that this House express its dismay for the more than 400 residents, of which 138 kids of the Kels River Farm, Kleine Akker, whose property was destroyed in an eviction on Monday. I've also asked both Honourable Andile Lily and Honourable Dennis Bakobaku to engage the Ministers of Human Settlement and Social Services and to respond to the needs of those evictees. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. Over to this side of the bench. Any motions? I'm moving over to Member Marin.
Speaker, thanks. Motion without notice that this council, that this house sends its condolences to the family and friends of a grape farmer in the Ex-River Valley, Mr. Chris van Wyk, one of the greatest and respectable agricultural minds, who died this morning of a heart attack. He will surely be missed.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. ACDP, Member ACDP. There we go.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ACDP wants to congratulate Austin Fernandez, a matric pupil age 17 from Bontewell High School that was crowned top achiever in a youth empowerment program. Speaker, in the article of 21st of August 2019 highlighted that Austin was a top achiever in his grade and participated in the 2019 Reach for the Stars Kingdom Kids and Prestigious Parents program. The aim of the program is to empower pupils to chase their dreams. The pupil participated in the event where he could say what he aspired to and what he overcome. Speaker, the ACDP wishes Austin well, all of the best for his matric finals and his future endeavours. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. Honourable Member Tego, I see you there. Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move a motion without notice that the House notes and appreciates the launch of the inaugural Andile Mbenyane pre-season tournament that took place on the 9th of August and the 17th of August 2019 in Wellington. Notes further that the tournament gives a platform to local football clubs to showcase talent and assist in the integrated fight against crime and other social ills. Congratulates the Battalion FC, which competes in the APC Mutsipe League, for winning the tournament, and calls for more funding to be made available to support such initiatives. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? Motion agreed to. I think I saw you, Honourable Member Smith.
Speaker, without notice, I move that the House notes and congratulates the ANC on a resounding victory on Ward 595 by-election, where it received 76% of the vote, while the likes of the DA could only get 5%. Notes further that these results are a further testimony that people from poor communities still view the ANC as the only party that can free them from poverty, and congratulates the newly elected councillor, Tolisa Ngwekazi. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved? Are there objections? The objections, the motion we printed on the order paper. Honourable Member.
Okay.
Honourable Member Smith, if you can take your seat. Honourable Member, I see you.
Can I give a last shot? Last shot by way of motion without notice, Deputy Speaker, that the House note that while the DA may have retained Ward 5 by-election in Eisner, its majority decreased owing up
Honourable Member Smith, can you take your seat?
Its majority decreased owing up to the performance of the newly formed parties like the PPI and KIM, which took over 1,000 votes from the DA. Note further that these are signs that the DA is starting to disintegrate in the province.
Order.
And welcomes the outcome. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion? There are objections. The motion we printed on the order paper. Are there any more motions without notice? Honourable Chief Whip, sorry, I think I left you out a long time ago. Apologies.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. That the House notes that on its quest for rebuilding, renewing and unity, the ANC-NEC took a decision to appoint an interim provincial committee that is led by Comrade Lerumo Kalako and Comrade Ronalda Nalumango, together with other members in this House. Notes further and congratulate members Rachel Van Vogel, Ayanda Pans, Andile Lili, and Nomulum Konkondlo and the leader of the opposition, Cameron Dagmo, on their appointment to serve in the PIC and wishes the ANC well as it seeks to rebuild a stronger organization ready to...
Order. 1 minute. Can I finish? Can the member finish? Honourable Chief Whip, can you continue? Honourable Chief Whip, can you continue?
To rebuild a stronger organization ready to take back municipalities in 2021 and the province in 2024. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable members, is that all? Have I covered everybody's motions without notice? Order, please. Okay. That concludes motions without notice. I would like now to take the opportunity to read give me a second, my considered ruling from a few sittings ago. During statements by members at the sitting of the House on the 1st of August, the Honourable Lilly made certain utterances which prompted the Honourable, the Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party, to raise a point of order requesting me to rule on whether the Honourable Lilly was transgressing Rule 59 of the Standing Rules by reflecting on the integrity or dignity of the Honourable, the Minister of Human Settlements. I undertook to study the Hansard transcript of the Honourable Member's statement and am now in a position to rule on this matter. During his address to the House, the Honourable Lilly said the following, and I quote, "What is the DA doing about its new Human Settlements MEC, the Honourable Member Simmers, and the many allegations against him? Newspaper articles are overflowing with information and wrongdoing. What example does he set for DA followers to emulate by ignoring the many allegations, yet the DA preaches to other parties on taking steps against their public representatives? There are those allegations of driving around party faithfuls without a valid driver's license, and that a senior DA party member of this government supplied the vehicle." Close quotes. Later on, the Honourable, the Deputy Chief Whip, again drew my attention to specifically Rule 59.2 of the Standing Rules. Freedom of speech in debate and proceedings is one of the most significant privileges members enjoy and is recognised all over the democratic world as essential for robust debate to take place free of outside influence. Significantly, it is guaranteed by our Constitution. Freedom of speech is curtailed by the legislature itself through its own standing rules, customs, and practices in order to avoid abuse of this freedom, as well as to protect and uphold the honour and dignity of the House. It furthermore seeks to guide the House to conduct its businesses in a responsible and an orderly manner and to promote the responsible use of the privilege of freedom of speech. I have sympathy with the Honourable Member Lilly for raising the issue in debate, since we operate in a political space and do not want to curtail members unduly on topical issues which are comprehensively reported on in the press. However, the rules are very clear on this matter. A member who wishes to bring improper or unethical conduct on part of any other member to the attention of this House may do so only by way of a substantive motion comprising of a clearly formulated and properly substantiated allegation. To his credit, and to soften the blow in a little bit, the Honourable Member Lilly did use the word allegations and alleged throughout his statement, albeit inconsistently. During the opportunity for notices of motion, the Honourable Lilly did attempt to self-correct by attempting to move a substantive motion on the same matter as required by the rules. The Honourable, the Chief Whip, raised an objection and asserted that Honourable Lilly may only have done so by way of a substantive motion as required by the rules. In light of the above, I wish to rule as follows. 1, that in terms of the powers vested in me by Rule 153 of the Standing Rules, the notice of motion appearing in the name of Honourable Member Lilly will be duly amended by omitting the offending words. 2, members' attention is drawn to the provisions of Rule 59 and the Chief Whips are requested to assist their members in this regard to ensure compliance with that rule. Further clarity on the application of Rule 59 is available on request. Furthermore, during the proceedings alluded to the above, The Honourable Lilly questioned the timekeeping relating to the statement and asserted that he was compromised in terms of the time allocated to him for the statement. Let me make it very clear to all the members. The table staff are the official timekeepers during the debates and do everything in their power to ensure that members receive the correct apportioned time of the time that they're entitled to, and I'm not going to tolerate any aspersions cast by members on their professionalism. I hear so rule. I will then just ask that I vacate the seats so that the Honourable Speaker can actually deliver his ruling.
I hope the Deputy Speaker did not migrate with everything here. Thank you. Thank you, Poche. Order, honorable members. During the debate on the 15th August, Honorable Michel raised a point of order regarding a notice of motion by the Honorable Chief Whip, where he asserted that the Honorable Chief Whip was in transgression of Rule 59 of the Standing Rules. Rule 59 requires that honorable members may only reflect on the integrity and dignity of another member by way of a substantive motion. A substantive motion can be defined as an independent and self-contained proposal concerning a concrete item of business with the object that the House takes a decision on a particular matter. I am satisfied that the Honorable Chief Whip of the official opposition complied with the requirements of Rule 59 with the necessary amendments affected by me in terms of Rule 153. However, in terms of Rule 64, the motion is inconsistent with the standing rules in that it is the same in substance as a matter that is already appearing on the order paper in the name of Honorable Lilly and will thus be removed from the order paper in terms of the power vested in me by Rule 153 of the Standing Rules. What the Honorable Chief Whip of the official opposition seeks to achieve with her motion could very well be achieved under the same motion that Honorable Lilly read, which is already in the order paper. Members will recognize it was number 21 in the previous order paper of the previous sitting, because this anticipates the discussion of Honorable Lilly's motion, and it's therefore out of order. Should Honorable Lilly wishes to withdraw his motion, his notice of a motion, rather, then the notice of a motion of the Chief Whip of the official opposition will therefore stand. With that, I conclude, and therefore the House is adjourned. Thank you, honorable members.